how do I pronounce your name?
Colion Noir.
Colion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there's a conspiracy out there.
Okay.
I made this name up.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Yeah.
that. We'll talk about that. We're live already? How'd you do that so quickly? Oh, you're a wizard. What's the conspiracy about your name is Colion Noir.
Yeah.
What's the conspiracy about your name?
That I made it up to hide who I really was.
Oh, some
And
CIA type shit.
Yeah, I'm like, everybody gets to have like pseudonyms except for me. When you're talking about guns, you don't get to have pseudonyms.
Did you have a different name?
Yeah, my name's Collins.
Oh, okay. So you did change your name.
Yeah, I did.
But there's a conspiracy behind you changing your name. But that's not real. You just
It's not.
decided you wanted a different name.
I got into guns and I wanted to start watching gun videos. And so I wanted to make a YouTube channel. And I didn't want to use my real name because I thought that wasn't cool enough. And so I said...
You thought your name wasn't cool enough?
No, I didn't want
That's such a African-American thing.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know comedians that change their names, like Earthquake.
Who the hell's Earthquake?
You don't know who Earthquake is? Fucking hilarious comedian, man. He's hilarious. But a white dude couldn't call himself Earthquake.
Yeah, you could.
Nah,
Come on,
you
man.
could, but nobody would.
A wrestler.
Oh, was a wrestler named Earthquake? But that's different.
Yeah, he's a
that's
big-
different. That's probably a big giant guy, right? So, what's your original name? What's your actual full original name?
I'll give you my first name.
Okay.
I just don't want to make it easy for people to show up at my house. Collins.
Collins.
Collins is my real name. Yeah,
That's a fine name. Something wrong with that name?
No, there's nothing wrong with it.
Why'd that name bother you to the point where you didn't want to have it on?
No, I just
YouTube
thought
account?
it'd be more fun to just
Oh.
come up with a pseudonym for my YouTube channel. Like, I didn't start my YouTube channel thinking, all right, I'm going to start this channel and I'm going to build this whole brand behind
Right.
it. No, it was just...
You
I
did
wanted-
it for fun.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
friends called me, one of my friends, he called me Killer Colion. Right? That was
Right.
the kind of little nickname that I had. And so I was like, okay, we'll just use Colion. And then I'm like, I'm always in black.
Why did he call you Killer Colion?
I have no idea.
Just one of
I
those
talked to him
things?
to this day, and I still don't know why he called me that.
Yeah, there's nicknames, man, that just happen
Yeah.
sometimes.
Now, there is a rapper in Houston by that name.
Killer Colion?
Colion, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if maybe he listened to him and then my name Collins and then Colion and so forth and so on. Yeah, so.
So, how did you get wrapped up with the NRA? So we should cover a couple of things
We'll
here
do the
today.
origin story.
Yeah. So you're kind of like a spokesperson for the NRA.
Not official spokesperson.
Not official,
No.
unofficial.
No,
But
I am.
you were a member of the NRA? Do they
Yes.
recognize you? Do they appreciate you? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so the way it started, I'm going to start from the beginning.
Okay.
All right. So I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who called me up one day and was like, do you want to go shooting? And I was like, because at the time I really wasn't pro-gun. And this was I was around 23,
How old are you now?
24. I'm 34.
So this is 10 years ago?
Yeah. And I hesitated a little bit because my background growing up, like, I didn't grow up with guns in the house. No one in my family had a gun. And for me, the idea and the notion of being a young black male with a gun, I always saw it through the lens of, gangbanger, drug dealer, so forth and so on. So that's the mindset I had with respect to firearms, unconsciously, right? I didn't even realize it, wasn't even conscious of it until I started getting into this very heavy and realized, okay, wow, I was thinking like that, didn't realize it. And so, but at the same time, I told myself, why am I afraid of essentially what is an inanimate object, right? So I think to myself, I'm like, all right, I really don't want to go. I'm a little terrified. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. And so I remember getting to the range. We get to the range, and we walk into the door, and then I hear the door for where the actual bays are, and I hear the pop, pop, pop go off. And I'm like, holy crap, this is actually happening. And so I kind of had this nervousness, but I'm with my friend, right? And so I don't want my friend to feel like, okay, you're acting kind of like a bitch, right? So I kind of kept it to myself. We get to the counter. We do all the paperwork requisite paperwork, liability forms, all that. And he has his gun. We get some ammo. We go to the lane. I remember it was the very last lane. It was, the name of the range was Top Gun in Houston. And so we go to the very last range. He gives me kind of like a brief instruction about how to shoot the gun, how to load it, so forth and so on. And so at that point, I remember picking up the gun, terrified, not knowing what to expect, not knowing what was going to happen. So I remember picking it up. It was a little Taurus PT-111 Millennium in .40 caliber. And this was a subcompact. Probably not the best first time shooting gun.
It's a big fucking gun.
Well, the gun itself was small, but the caliber, exactly.
Powerful.
Yeah.
A lot of kick.
Exactly. So my experience, if anybody who watched that as a gun person would be like, oh, this is not going to end well. so I remember standing at the bay and taking the gun and pointing it and shooting it. And I remember just the concussive force, the explosion, with the gun dancing in my hand. And I was like, holy crap, that was terrifying. Then I shot it again. I'm like, I like this shit. and the weird thing is, and not in the way that most people think, the nerdy aspect of my brain kicked in.
Right.
I'm like, holy crap, like I'm taking this projectile and I'm launching it, right? Several feet. And I just, because the second shot allowed me to realize what just happened. I just contained an explosion in my hand.
Right.
I'm like, if you don't find that amazing, you don't have a pulse.
It's amazing. The thing that people are bothered by is what comes with it and how people use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think an analogy that's a fair analogy but people reject is driving cars and a lot of these fucking psychos that have been running over people in the street. I mean, it just happened again in Berlin.
Yeah.
Or what, somewhere in Germany. Some guy ran a bunch of people over and then blew his brains out. It's an object, right? It's a thing that you use.
And I'm a huge car guy too.
I am as well.
Yeah,
I love cars. I mean, if someone said we have to ban cars because people started running people over with cars, they'd be like, well, okay. I think we're dealing with a whole bunch of problems. And there's a bunch of things that I think we could probably agree on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we can agree on is all these mass shootings are horrific.
Absolutely.
They're terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It's an evil, terrible thing that... Here's another thing. No NRA members are doing that. That's one of the things that's really kind of fucked up about people getting angry at the NRA.
Yeah.
We've never had a mass shooting ever.
That I can recall that was done by an NRA member?
I looked. I tried to find one. I can't find a mass shooting that was perpetrated by an NRA member.
And I think it's... So the biggest problem that a lot of gun owners, especially NRA members, have is the conversation that's being had is basically coloring or actually forgetting the human element behind those three letters.
Mm-hmm.
Like the NRA isn't like this demigod that just sits in the cloud of Olympia and it is just one big guy that just is orchestrating this entire thing.
Yeah.
You're talking 5 million people.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm a member. I'm a gun owner, right? That's who I am, along with 5 million other people who are that way. And then there are a ton of other people who think they're NRA members and aren't. And then a ton of other people who probably don't mind being NRA members. They just haven't gotten around to doing it and getting a membership.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of those people, and I'm saying that just to be safe, they're good people.
I think there's quite a few good people. The people that have perpetrated all these mass shootings are definitely not good people. But what's wrong with them? Well, I'll tell you what's not wrong with them. Guns. It's not guns that are wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
They use the guns to express what's wrong with them. You know, and everybody wants to look at the object, which I get.
What's easier?
Well, it is easier, and it's something that everyone's pointing to. Like, why do you need an AR-15?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need a this? Why do you need a that? These are good questions. Why do you need these things? Why do I need that fucking samurai sword over there? I don't.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what do you need?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's another thing too, though. Like, and I've said it before, I think we are a victim of our own success in this country, right? I do think this is the greatest country in the world. But the problem with that is this country was built on an ideological foundation that I think it aids in that our ability to be as great as we are. But we live in a world now where people don't see the necessity for something that was never supposed to be seen through the lens of necessity in the first place. The Second Amendment doesn't give me a right. It preserves something that already existed. But what happens is we have a culture of people who look at the Second Amendment as a privilege, not a right. They look at it as a privilege. So that's why they say, well, why do you need that? Well, why do you need more than 10 rounds? Why do you need this? Why do you need that? And I'm like, first of all, we're framing the entire conversation under need when that's not what the Second Amendment is about. It's a right that I've already had. It's a natural right that I had the moment that I stepped foot on this earth as a person. The right to self-defense is universal.
Yeah, and people say, okay, it's a right, but obviously there's a problem, so we have to do something about it, so you're going to have to give up your guns. This is the common conversation, and it's very flippant, and it's not well thought out, and there's no consideration whatsoever to mental health issues. I think this is
disservice.
I think that's the primary problem.
Yeah.
I've been saying this from the get-go. I think it's the primary problem. I think it's a mental health issue. And people say, "Oh, that's simplifying it." I don't think it is. I think it's the opposite. I think it's ignored.
Yeah.
Look, there's something wrong when you have this many people on mental health medication, and then when you look at the number of mass shooters, it's almost universal. Almost every single one of them is on some sort of psychiatric medication. But that's not a part of the narrative.
Yeah.
That's not a part of the conversation. The conversation is always get rid of guns. Now, I don't want crazy people to have guns, and I don't think you do either.
No, I don't.
So outside of taking away the rights to have guns from normal law-abiding people like yourself and myself, I have guns. What do we do?
Okay. So first of all, I think we need to frame the conversation into specifics, right?
You're a lawyer, right?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you understand bills and amendments and law. Okay.
Yeah. And so I think, one, we're lumping the entire conversation into one category, right? If we're going to talk about school shootings, let's talk about school shootings.
Okay.
Right? So first thing I say is, because one thing a lot of people on that side like to say is, well, you guys just don't want any gun laws, and you say no to everything, but you have no solutions.
Well, that's true. But to stand up for that, it's because all they want to do is take away the guns.
Yeah.
They're saying, let's take away the guns. You're saying, we're not going to take away the guns. You guys just don't want to get your guns taken away.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You're right. No one wants to get their guns taken away.
And then I get labeled a monster as a result of saying
exactly. You want kids to die.
Yeah.
And it's a fucking real sneaky conversation.
It's disingenuous as hell.
Yes, it is.
And the odd thing about it is anybody who's paying attention to the discourse and the way it's happening, especially on social media, right? Anybody who follows my Twitter account knows this. Multiple occasions, I've tried to have a rational conversation with people who are on the complete opposite side of my spectrum of this issue.
Is there any of this online, like debates or anything like that?
Well, no. I mean, it's just
on Twitter.
Just tweets going back and forth.
You can't do anything rational on Twitter.
You can't.
Occasionally you can, and it's a goddamn miracle.
Yeah,
like
it is.
The clouds apart, people being friendly.
The funny thing is, you want to see me flustered?
Yeah.
Respond to me rationally when I have a conversation with you. Because I'm always, I have this guard up, right?
Right, of course.
And I actually had to check myself about that a little bit, because how am I any better than the people on the other side if I have the same energy that they have towards me?
That's a very good point.
And so I've started, because I can be incredibly snarky. I can. And it's partly due because of my friends. They're all assholes. They just are. Like, all the friends I grew up with, I grew up arguing with a group of guys who, when they were losing it logically, they went to jokes.
Right.
Right?
Sounds like a man.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
It took me a second to realize it, because I was the one in law school, right? I was the one that was going to law school, pre-law, all that stuff. So everything I did was focused and centered through the idea of logic. You're not making any sense, and then I'll crack a joke. And then everyone's laughing. And I realized there's some power to that, right? Humor. I mean, you should know something about that.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah. And so I took on some of those qualities in the way that I advocate for firearms, because it can be a little disarming, but the disarming aspect of it can be beneficial because it causes people to drop their guard a little bit.
Right.
And then when you drop your guard, you can take in information more objectively, more so than waiting or looking for confirmation bias, or instigating your cognitive dissonance because you just don't want to hear the thing that's contrary to what you already believe.
I just think you need a lot of character, like as a person, to be able to communicate reasonably on Twitter.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are just lacking that. So it's almost like the ability to steal when no one's looking, the ability to just shit on someone with no eye-to-eye contact, no social repercussions, you're not feeling anything from that person. You say something rude to them, they're not in front of you, so you don't feel terrible saying it.
Yeah, no, it's I'm not gonna lie. So Twitter is a dirty place.
It's a dirty place, but it's a great place too sometimes.
It is. It has its benefits, right?
I think there's some really good conversations to be had on Twitter, and I've had really interesting moments on Twitter where I've learned a lot about things, where people have sent me links and I've retweeted them, and I've learned a lot of things. But it's hard sometimes, man, because there are so many people that are just unreasonable and they're not good at communicating and they're not happy people.
They're not, man.
There's a lot of people out there that just aren't happy, man.
It's,
you know?
And to be honest with you, I didn't realize it until I got to the notoriety that I am now in the space that I'm in.
Well, you're in a weird space
Yeah.
because you're in the space of defending guns, you know?
And I'm black.
Yeah.
And I'm relatively young.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there.
And I
And
wear
you're
a
a
hat.
lawyer.
And I wear, well, they tend
Yeah.
to disregard that.
Well, they should probably pay attention.
Well, it doesn't
That's
matter because I'm advocating also with certain 3 letters behind me that they automatically assume is the devil. Right?
Now, how does the NRA feel about you? Do you know? I mean, do you have conversations with them? Are they saying good job? Are they pleased? Or
Oh, I mean, as far as I can tell, they are.
Yeah.
We still have the relationship we have. It's very much a very symbiotic relationship.
But it's a weird one right now because it's like, this is what I hear from the NRA. I hear Colion and then I hear Ted Nugent. those are the 2 that I hear.
I got to be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of Ted Nugent's rhetoric, but I do know where it's coming from. But then again, I didn't grow up listening to Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
That's not my demographic. But at the same time, Ted Nugent is still an individual, and people fail to understand that. We may be monolithic on the issue of firearms, but we're not monolithic in the way we go about expressing that.
Well, he's right about things.
Yeah,
you know,
is.
just because someone's outrageous doesn't mean they're not right. Like, have you ever seen his the debate that he had in a gun store with Piers Morgan?
Yeah, no. The funny thing is, Ted Nugent's incredibly bright.
He's a smart guy. He's just
smart as
crazy.
hell. I don't even think he's crazy.
I do. Listen, you can only kill so many things before you lose your fucking marbles. Ted lives on a fucking ranch in Texas where it's all fenced in. He's just shooting all animals. He hunts every day. He's a psycho. And I don't, with all due respect, I'm a big fan of Stranglehold.
So where's the line of demarcation between
he's
becoming
outrageous. It's
hunting
part
too
of
much
it.
and not hunting enough in terms of crossing over that line into sociopath?
Well, I'm just joking about that because I'm a
I know.
hunter. I mean,
Yeah.
it really depends entirely upon what he's doing with the meat. And I know he gives it to Hunters for the Hungry. I know he gives it to neighbors and friends, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And he actually has he has an obligation to be the steward of his land because he has a lot of exotics and stuff on it. I'm just totally joking around.
Oh no, I know.
But when you you listen to his conversation with Piers Morgan, which Piers Morgan takes that flippant, left-wing, knee-jerk, reactionary, we have to
Egregiously
ban
arrogant.
guns. Yeah, he's a cunt.
Yeah.
And when he's on with Ted just knew everything about the actual facts. When you start running around with statistics of gun violence, he's like, do you know how many of those people were bad guys that were shot by cops?
Yeah.
Do you know how many of those people were people that were shot when they were breaking into people's homes? Do you know how many of those people were people that were killed in self-defense?
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
It's not. And do you know how many of those people, when you talk about gun violence, how many of those people were suicide?
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Keep in mind that's recent.
Suicide.
Well, no. So here's what happened. So when I started getting really deep into the advocacy component of it, everyone was screaming, 30,000 people a day die from gun violence, 30,000 people a day. That's what they were running with, right? And they were scaring all the suburban house moms. Oh my gosh, we got to do something about gun control. We got to do something about guns. So I jumped into the pool and I just like something doesn't seem right about that figure, right? And I'm not saying I'm the one who put this out there.
What did you think was wrong about it?
It seemed inflated. I don't know what it was. It's on a subconscious level, or maybe it was me looking for a confirmation bias, right? Because I felt the way I did about firearms. I'll be honest and say that.
Right.
And so what I did is I kind of researched a little more, and I realized, holy shit, over 65% of that 30,000 is suicides. 65%.
Is that real?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So what is that, like 18,000 people a day shoot themselves?
Man,
Something crazy like that?
But what do we say at the top of the show? Man, people are miserable, man.
That's a fucking crazy number, though, man. That's a Kevin Hart concert.
Yeah, pretty much.
All together. Good night, everybody. Blam!
Well,
That's really what it is. 18,000 people. That's fucking incredible.
so then it begs the question that you brought up before, the mental health aspect.
Yeah.
How many lives would we actually save if we took the same energy we apply to just making guns evil and trying to ban guns and take that energy and put it towards understanding what it is, why as a society we have a society that is so eager to really not want to be here anymore. expand that a little bit more, because we have all the guns in the universe here in America, right? Compared to any other country. But yet our suicide rates should be exceedingly higher than all the other countries that don't have as many guns. But it's not the case, right? You look at the UK, you look at Japan. Japan has double our suicide rate.
Does it really?
Hell yeah.
Double?
Yeah.
Wow,
Absolutely.
so 60,000 people a day in Japan or whatever the fuck?
Per year, probably.
Smaller,
Not,
right.
not every day. It's every year.
Yeah, per year.
Oh, yeah.
Annually.
Per year.
123.
What did I say, a day?
Yeah. Just making sure.
There you go, conflating numbers
Sorry.
again.
I fucked up. Did I say a day earlier or did I say a year earlier? A day.
Yeah, because
Oh, okay. 30,000,
yeah.
what did I say a day? 30,000 a year doesn't sound that bad. There's 300 million people.
Oh yeah, so you were thinking about it predicated on a daily basis. No, annually. Annually, 30,000
I don't know why I
people.
thought that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense. Why would I think that?
I think he might have said it on accident too.
Oh, really? Did
It's
I?
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah,
rewind.
30,
Okay, rewind.
Yeah, 30,000 people.
30,000 a year. That
Die from
seems-
gun violence. They call it gun violence,
right.
But in reality, you break those numbers down. Remember, context is
65%
everything.
suicide.
65% of those are suicides.
Okay.
Then about 5% of those are, God damn it, I think justified homicides, including times when cops shoot someone in self-defense and it's justified, right?
Okay.
And self-defense shootings, so forth and so on.
Do they count times when cops really shouldn't have shot somebody but did and got
pretty
away with
I'm
it?
pretty sure they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. But even then, that number would be exceedingly marginal comparatively, right? So
right.
then you have the remaining number, which are, and then you have like 3 to 5, I think it was 15% are justified. 3 to 5% are accidents.
3 to 5% is a lot.
Yeah, no, it's 900 people a year, right? So, and I tweeted this. I said, again, if we focused on firearm safety education, that number would drop in half.
It might. But you're not gonna fix the intelligence level of the humans that are fucking around with guns.
That's where you underestimate the fact and underestimate how those people are dying accidentally.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of people who don't understand basic gun safety, right? Within that 900, it's a lot of them. When you see some of the accidents that happens with firearms, they're easily mitigated by just simply knowing the 4 rules of firearm ownership. And when you get into the gun community, like as a whole, like when you follow that rabbit into, like we're crazy about gun safety. You put your finger on a trigger in a picture, we're slaughtering you.
Yeah.
Not literally, but you know
I know
what I
what
mean?
you're saying.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we're gonna hold you accountable.
Look, I have a friend who has so many guns he doesn't know how many guns he has. I'm like, how many guns you have, man?
don't know how many
My
guns
friend
I have.
Justin, I know you're listening. He's a legit gun nut and great guy.
Yeah, and I don't know how many guns I have either. Right?
Fucking crazy person.
I mean, hell, I guess so. but then again, I didn't shoot my first gun until what, 23, 24?
Right. Yeah.
So did I just become crazy all of a sudden?
I think I was about the same age.
Yeah.
Well, I think I shot one when I was real young, and I definitely shot one in camp when I was like, I guess I was probably 12.
Yeah.
But I didn't count that. I shot my first handgun when I first came to California. And I might have been...
Really?
Yeah.
How ironic.
Yeah. Well, what's ironic is it's way easier to get a gun here than it is in New York. I lived in New York. It's fucking hard to get a handgun in New York. Almost impossible. In here, it was easy.
Legally, you mean?
Yeah, legally.
Oh, legally. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were
Well,
talking
yeah.
about-
I mean, illegally.
Yeah, because
No, I mean, when I came here, it was 1994. I guess maybe 93, 94, I bought a gun. And I was like, I can't believe I just buy a gun.
you remember
They
what you
just
bought?
did a check. Yeah. I bought a 38 special. I bought a Walter PPK, and I
Okay.
bought a Glock 9mm.
all right, man of good taste. Man of good taste. I'm a fan of those. I'm a fan of the PPK as well.
Yeah, it's a cute little gun. Well, when I first came to California, I'd heard all this crazy shit about drive-by shootings and gang violence. I just thought it was just going to be a fucking war zone out here.
I mean,
You know?
but the funny thing about it is it's your natural disposition was, I need something to protect myself.
Yes.
It's such a natural thought process.
It
I don't know
is.
why we've perverted it to this deal where it's like something has to be wrong with you if you have that mentality or that mindset.
Well, there's a lot of people that haven't experienced real violence, you know, and if you experience real violence and you've seen what happens when you have a terrible person around people that aren't terrible,
Which is true.
That's a reality that people don't like to face, and they don't like to look at the other side of the coin. Like whenever there's an instance where there's a shooter and the shooter gets taken out by someone who's a trained a person who's trained with firearms and knows tactics. Nobody wants to talk about that. That just gets brushed off. They don't. There's not a balanced conversation to be had.
There isn't. But the interesting thing is, like, I have a group chat. When stuff like that does happen, they write it off as just anomalies. Right?
How's that an anomaly? That's exactly what it's supposed to be used for.
I don't. Well, again, like I said, confirmation bias and cognitive dissonances is a bitch.
Right.
And we all suffer from it, right, to an extent.
For sure.
But when you add in the component of fear, right, for a lot of people, they don't necessarily hate guns.
They
They're
hate
just
the
scared
consequences of being shot or someone they love being shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things about it is, though, those people never put themselves in the position of being the shooter.
Right.
They always put themselves in the position of being the victim of a shooting. So that's why you get, well, why do you need that? Because they don't see it as, okay, this allows me to better defend myself.
Right.
They look at it from the perspective of, well, if you're able to have that, then you might use that against me.
There's
You know what
that,
I'm saying?
and there's also the looming specter of the mass shooter. It's just so fucking common these days. It seems like every 3 or 4 months there's a new instance. How many times does it happen?
Perception is a bitch.
Okay, but the reality is, the absolute reality is, they have happened. They are horrific, and there's more of them here than anywhere else in the world. That's reality. But here's another interesting reality.
Hold it real quick.
Go ahead.
So when you say that, you're talking about the developed world, correct? Because that's usually the caveat they like to put on it.
Well, there's no mass shootings in the undeveloped world. People don't just go into a fucking mall and shoot people up. What's interesting is it's very rare where people.
I think it happens more than people realize. It just doesn't get reported on. Think
really?
about it. How many people die in Chicago on a weekend, over a weekend, that doesn't get reported?
That's true, but
we live in America where we
true.
have complete access to information.
That is true,
Yeah.
but it's a different kind of violence because it's people that are actively trying to get people that are actively trying to get them. It's gang violence, whereas school shootings are complete innocent. School shootings are the worst, right? Because it's a child and some fucking psycho decides to make the most noise possible by going into a school and shooting it up. That's the scariest and the worst. For most people. When you think about gang violence, you say, well, that's violence. It's terrible that people got shot, but it's people that are trying to shoot each other.
All right. So then when I tell you that the remaining homicides in this country, right, at 30,000 number that I gave you annually, over 80% of that is gang violence.
That's crazy, too.
Think about
believe
that.
It.
Yeah.
No, I believe you. But it's when you see Sandy Hook, when you see Parkland, when you see the shooting in Colorado, Aurora, in the movie theater, when you see these mass shootings, these are what terrify people.
Yeah.
People are not necessarily terrified of the gang violence in Chicago. I'm going to Chicago in a couple of months, and not one fucking person has brought up, hey, man, that place is a war zone. Everybody's like, oh, I love Chicago. You're going to get deep dish pizza? Like, nobody gives a fuck.
That's 'cause you're white.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
They know I'm not going to the South Side.
Dude, you see, that's the thing. I just went to Chicago. I was just in Chicago before I was here.
And they were like, were you locked and loaded? Did you wear a vest?
Yes. I'm dead serious. I got all those questions. When I said I was going to Chicago, those were the first things people told me. Now, granted, I did go to South Side. I did film in South Side. Yeah, we did.
Were you nervous while you were walking around?
Hell yeah, I was nervous. I'm not Superman, man.
So when you're walking around, are you strapped?
Not in Chicago because it's illegal for me to be.
That's what's crazy is that Chicago has really strict gun laws, and they don't work at all.
I was driving down a road where there were like 6, 7, 8 dudes who jumped in front of the car when we were driving that because we didn't look like we belonged there. And I'm positive every single one of them had a gun.
They jumped in front of the car.
Well, they didn't like lob their bodies in front of the car, but you see a car that's unfamiliar driving down a side street.
So they try to stop you?
They didn't try to stop me. I think they're trying to figure out who the hell we were.
They just got a better look at you.
Or they were just trying to serve us.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things.
Right.
But then again, when you're driving down the side street in Southside Chicago with GoPros on the car.
Yeah. Oh, that's true too.
Yeah.
Right.
So you kind of have that.
So we all agree that the gun violence, especially in terms of mass shootings, is one of the biggest problems that we have in terms of like a horrific public image problem. Right, it's something that you see when I say public image, I should rephrase that. What I mean is like public perception problem. Like you see it, and it's just death and violence and children and innocence, and we as people, I think, consider the death of innocence to be one
Absolutely.
of the most egregious and horrific deaths.
Absolutely.
So I think we both agree on that,
Absolutely.
right? So that's 100% across the board, I think, with any decent person. These mass shootings are horrific.
Mm-hmm.
I think, in my opinion, the number one aspect of the argument that's not being discussed is the mental health aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you opposed to more screening of people to get guns?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, in an ideal world, if we could minority report it and figure it out who's.
I don't mean minority report. I mean just like check to see if they're on mental health medication.
But I mean, we currently have. Well, see, here's the thing: the slippery slope with that too.
Mm-hmm.
So what constitutes somebody being on mental health medication that's prohibitive?
Right.
What if I deal with anxiety? If I'm on Xanax prescribed, does that prevent me from owning a firearm?
It's a good question. In California, for the longest time, they were trying to make it if you had a medical marijuana card, you couldn't have a firearm. I think they were doing that federally. I think that was a federal thing, that if you had a legal medical marijuana card, that they were trying to prevent people. They were trying to prevent people from. They were trying to cripple the
de
medical
facto.
marijuana
Gotcha.
industry because they knew that people wanted guns.
Because to be honest, it's intellectually dishonest. If I can go to the store with a gun on me and buy alcohol,
Right.
like, and you know me, I don't
Right.
even smoke.
Right.
Right. But let's just be honest about it. Like alcohol, weed. I mean, I think utilizing that as a prohibitive means to own a firearm, I think is
That is true, but if you were under the influence of some of the shit I got in this studio,
Well, no,
and then you'd be super paranoid.
Well, here's the thing.
And hold it onto a gun.
I didn't say under the influence. I
Right.
said because all the marijuana card does is allow you to buy it.
No, 100%. But
Yeah.
I'm saying that is an issue if you're under the influence and you have a gun, right?
Yeah, but I'm allowed to. But you go to my house right now. I have all types of whiskeys at home.
Right. Yeah, but if you're under the influence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if
So
anything-
I can't carry a firearm and then
Right.
be drunk.
Right. You shouldn't be drunk with a gun. You shouldn't be high as fuck with a gun. Neither one of those are good ideas.
And nor should you be driving.
Right. Nor should you be driving. So should you be on Xanax with a gun? That's the question. I don't know the answer to because I've never had Xanax.
Exactly. Me neither.
I don't know what it's like,
Yeah.
but I do know that there's been people that have killed people when they were on Xanax. And, that guy in Vegas, the shooter in Vegas, that guy was on anti-anxiety medication.
I didn't know that.
Chris Cornell was on anti-anxiety medication when he killed himself. Look, it's got a profound effect on some individuals, and
Absolutely.
it's not uniform. The way it affects you, it might affect
not affect
Jamie
somebody
different.
totally different, yeah.
It's just it's a different.
I mean,
thing.
I know tons of people who are on it.
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah, and they respond, like you said, they respond to it differently.
Yeah, yeah, and I know tons of people on it who also drink while they're on it, which you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not good either.
Yeah. It's
So screening.
with the screening component, right? You got to be careful because what it then does, it's like it becomes a de facto way of preventing people to own firearms arbitrarily, right? So it's like, oh well, you have anxiety, or even somebody who's maybe dealing with PTSD.
Right.
Not everybody dealing with PTSD is a potential murderous, ravenous, evil
100%.
person who's just
Right.
going to go out and kill people. So with the screening component, that's why I say yes or no, right? If you can find a way, to establish a mental screening, but even then, no, because there's a due process aspect to it as well, right? So you can't prevent me from owning, and you can't prevent me from exercising a right if I haven't done something to absolve myself from being able to do that legally, right?
Okay,
So
but what if they come to your house and you've got, let's say, you've got like a cork board up and you got all these pictures of schools and fucking arrows pointing to the emergency exits and plans of how to block things off, and then pictures of Jodie Foster and pictures of serial killers up everywhere, and you're on anti-anxiety medications and the cops talk to you and you're fucking squirrely as hell. You haven't done anything though.
Yeah. Arrest me then. If you can't arrest
how do
me,
they arrest
you can't.
you? What-
If you can't arrest me for a crime
Right.
or possibly attempting it, because like the legal standard is like taking substantial act to commit a crime, even though you don't do it, that's attempted, right?
Did you hear about the kid that got kicked out of school? What was the school? He was an Asian kid, dyed his hair blonde, started collecting bullets, got a semi-automatic rifle. His friends started freaking out. They called the cops. Cops came to visit him. He bought another rifle, and I believe they deported him.
They deported him for reasons not having to do with the firearms.
They deported him for reasons that he wasn't actually going to school
class,
anymore.
And he was on a green card or visa, I believe.
But the way the sheriffs were framing it was they deported it because they wanted this fucking psycho out of the country, and they think that they might have prevented a crime.
They probably did, but they still had
right?
to. They still had to establish a legal basis for deporting him.
But they did. All they had was that he didn't go to class.
Yeah.
I mean that's something you've done. I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean everybody's.
But then again, he wasn't a citizen.
Right.
So that was
Right.
that was the requirement for him to continue to be here.
But it was really.
It was kind of like how they got like Al
guns.
Capone. You know, they got Al Capone by tax evasion,
Right.
not by way of
Right. But he really had guns and was acting crazy, and that's why the kids that were friends with him called. And that's why they acted, and they just found that loophole.
Yeah.
So what do you do with someone like that? Other than, I mean, this guy, we had something.
Yeah.
What if this kid was still going to school?
I mean, it'd be pretty bad.
Yeah, pretty bad.
But then again, we still have our laws for a reason, right? We have our inherent rights for a reason. We have due process for a reason. Because if we didn't have those, right, anyone could just come up and say, man, you know what? I saw Colion Noir on Instagram the other day. He posted a picture of a gun. Then he was like cursing people out because they were making fun of him, the water he was drinking. And so, you know what? Somebody needs to go check on him and make sure he's okay.
Right.
And somebody needs to go and take his guns away from him.
Right.
There's got to be due process.
I appreciate that. And I agree with you.
And it's unfortunate in that some people may slip through the cracks. But I can't arrest someone for something that they haven't done yet.
Right.
You just can't.
Well, I agree.
And so that's where we are right now. So then now we're getting to the complexities, the hard questions, right? What do we do? How do we put something in place to catch the people who do happen to fall between the cracks, right? So then you go, okay,
try to keep.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, no.
I move a lot. I don't know if you see my videos.
Right. Worries,
I'm like Hydra.
The complexities.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue. Which is why we're largely not having it. We're having it here because no one wants to have this conversation on the national scene because it's hard and it doesn't make for great soundbite and it doesn't make for good TV. Right? Because that's why I hate doing cable news hits because I have 2 minutes to basically deduce a complex issue that we've been debating for decades, almost centuries.
It's the worst. And it's also people talking over each other. And there's one, they have two boxes, one guy here, one guy there.
Absolutely.
Usually you're not even in the same room together.
Nope, we're not.
You're talking through those earpieces. There's a delay. Those things are a disaster.
They're horrible.
It's one of the worst ways to communicate.
Horrible, which is why I try to establish my platform with my show Noir. I try to have it as a platform that's open to people to come on. Hey, look, you want to come on and discuss this issue? By all means, come do it.
Have you had anyone that's like really strict anti-gun on?
Yeah. I had an entire season. So what we did in the season, I think it was 2 seasons ago, we brought on, it was a young lady and a guy from New Zealand, I can't remember. But he came on the show. They were anti. And so what we did was we had a roundtable discussion at the end of every episode of my show. And we would bring up a specific topic and we discuss it. And so basically it was like 2 against 1 essentially. And so they would talk to me about what their thoughts on what we talked about in the show or a particular gun control issue. And we had that conversation. I had an individualized sit down with her as well. And we talked about it and then took her to the shooting range to shoot for the first time, but that's going to be overlooked.
Right.
They ignore it.
Well, they're probably not even aware of it because I wasn't aware of it.
No, they're aware of it.
You think
The
so?
people who need to be aware of it are aware of it.
Okay.
Because, like, for instance, I bring this point up, and it makes me come across as if, like, I feel some type of way because he didn't mention me. But it's not really that. It just speaks volumes to what I've been pointing at for the longest. They ignore rational discourse. John Oliver did a 20-minute monologue on NRA TV about NRA TV, right? 20 minutes. You know how long a 20-minute monologue is. That's a long time.
That's pretty long. Yeah.
He didn't mention me once. He didn't mention my show. I have 3 shows on NRA TV. 3 shows. And I have the second longest running show on NRA TV. He didn't mention me once. The level of detail that they went into within that monologue lets me know they watched everything on that platform.
Okay.
They watched it all.
And why do you think he left you out?
Because it didn't fit the narrative.
Right. Also, because he is a progressive guy with glasses who's white, and he really shouldn't you really shouldn't say anything negative about black people.
How so? He's not, but he's not white though. He's a minority just like me.
What is he?
I don't know. He's like, I don't.
John Oliver? He's white.
John
as
Oliver's
fuck.
not white.
What is he then?
John Oliver white.
If he's not white, I'm not white. What the fuck is he?
Were you like
Mostly
Italian
Italian,
and
Irish,
and
a little bit
Irish,
Irish. Yeah. Am I white? If I'm not, what the fuck is?
If I saw you on the street, you are.
In the olden days, I wasn't. My grandparents
true.
weren't white.
Yeah.
When my grandparents came over, that guy's white
Is
as
John
fuck,
Oliver
bro.
white?
He's white like paper. Look at him.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh shit, I'm wrong. Well, there you go.
What did you think he was?
I don't know. I never
Are
thought
you
about
getting
it.
him confused with the Daily Show guy?
I probably am.
Trevor Noah?
No, not Trevor. I know about Trevor. Damn,
No,
you're right.
Yeah, he's white as fuck. He's a
Damn.
white Englishman.
Man, I'm racist.
But for a guy like that, guys like that here's the thing about progressives, and I like John Oliver. I'm not negative against John Oliver.
No, I'm
Although I do
gonna
think
say
he's
this.
doing a show.
I had this perspective up until this point, so I'm gonna shut off my belief system and listen to you and listen to what you're about to say because I hadn't thought about this
Yeah.
because I've thought he wasn't white this entire time. So yeah. So now
he's
all right,
white
let's
as
go.
fuck.
All right.
I mean, it might not even be why he did it. He might have found the worst examples, and maybe you were too reasonable, and it doesn't fit the narrative of being funny. I mean, his show, although his show has points and he makes these very, these clear conclusions, and but it's funny. It's a funny show.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing behind it. Is
But
that it's
any girl who's dated me knows, like I have enough episodes on that platform. You can find some stuff to make fun of me about.
Well, I'm sure they could, but I don't think that's the kind of thing they're trying to make fun of, like individual personalities that say stupid shit. I think what they're trying to do is point out the disingenuous narrative from the NRA while ignoring the disingenuous narrative from the anti-gun advocates.
Okay. I could possibly see that. I'm trying to be fair and reasonable because my mind wants to go, nah. He realized that by mentioning me, right? It's going to pique curiosity with the audience in which he's trying to.
So you
he's
think
trying to
that
speak
you're
to.
too reasonable and too logical, and that since you're not like this redneck hee-haw type character that like to talk about you, it doesn't fit their narrative. So let's just ignore him and
because
concentrate on the dummies.
Think about it, like
Right, but the
everybody
dummies
on
are
that-
still real though, right?
Yeah, but
There are
they
some
have dummies
real-
They have dummies on all sides.
That's true. That's
right?
true. But it's pretty easy to find like pro-gun dummies. You can find quite a few of them.
I can. Pretty easy to find dummies on the other side as well too.
For
I
sure.
do, yeah.
But you wouldn't be looking if you were on that side, right? If you're on the anti-gun side, you're looking for pro-gun dummies. Pro-gun dummies.
Yeah.
Pro-gun dummies are easy to find. They are, right? There's plenty of them right now. You can go fucking find them on Instagram and Twitter, and there's dummies all over the world.
But see, here's the thing though. The thing about what John Oliver does, and this the thing. This is the kind of disingenuous nature of satire. Right?
Okay.
Political satire. I call it the comedian plausible deniability card. Right.
Okay.
So you can make a joke about something, and then say, "Oh, it has no influence because it's just a joke." It's not.
But he's not saying that, is he? He's not saying it doesn't have an influence.
Well, exactly. He understands the influence it wields. But he's saying he can always swipe the plausible deniability card and say, well, no, I wasn't making an actual political statement. Like I know that there are reasonable people on the other side. No, you're pushing a narrative that has been pushed for decades about an organization that fights for the Second Amendment. The same narrative that's being pushed by groups of people who say the only thing standing in their way of more gun control is the NRA. So what do you do? So where does the NRA get its power from? Because they talk out of both sides of their mouth. The NRA gets their power from the NRA gets their power by their membership.
Right.
Right. So what do? You do your best to stifle that membership. You make it seem as unattractive as possible, and then your audience is already largely uneducated on the issue. Right. And then there's already this perceived notion that the NRA is just a bunch of racist white rednecks. Right. So then what do you do to further that narrative? You talk about their platform, and then you pull out all of those things that further drive that narrative while ignoring the most popular figure on the platform.
Which is you.
Which is me, and so who so happens to be black. So what does that say? It tells me that it was deliberate. I really do want to agree with you and say, you know what? He's white. He didn't want to be seen as attacking the black guy, so forth and so on.
I think there's a little of that, but I think there's also he's doing a show. Now, let me explain how a show works. He's got a team of writers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of people back there. They are just trying to be funny. They're trying to make points for sure, but they're trying to find stupid shit that they can mock.
Yeah.
And why would they concentrate on the guy who makes sense if they're looking for stupid shit that they can mock? They're not trying to make a balanced, reasonable argument like maybe we would do right here, right now.
Yeah.
What they're doing is doing a condensed, edited down, very smooth, polished television show where that rant has been dissected and gone over by a team of writers, and they have video that corresponds to it and photographs that they go to, and they have clips that they show, and then they mock the clips. It's a comedy show. They do have a point, but it's a comedy show.
Absolutely agree with you.
So that's why they didn't go after you, is because maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're articulate, maybe it is because you're young and black, and they just don't feel like it's a smart thing to do. But it's because they're making a show.
I agree with you. Now, let me tell you why my panties are in a ruffle about it.
Okay.
It's because I understand the influence of that show when people make political decisions.
But don't you think it's preaching to the choir, that show?
What do you mean? That one?
That show, yeah. John Oliver's show. I think if I had to guess how many people who are watching that show are left-wing leaning, Democratic leaning, liberal leaning, I would say it's a giant percentage.
Here's the problem, though. The number of people who come to me and say, I don't deal with the NRA because they're racist and they're a bunch of white rednecks.
Who says that?
Oh, God, I get it all the time.
Well,
Like,
what
get it
is
all
the
the time.
evidence that they point to? They just assume
point
that they're
to-
racist?
That's just it.
Yeah.
Because in their attempts to just make a show, right? And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I absolutely agree with you. But we can't undermine how influential that show is at crafting people's thoughts about particular issues and ideologies within this country. Right. And so I stand back and I'm like, man, this is dangerous, because to me, the Second Amendment is incredibly important. Right? You know what the funny thing is? I thought the monologue was hilarious.
He's a funny dude.
The monologue is hilarious. I'll give him the monologue. Monologue was funny.
Well, then isn't he a funny dude because he said that funny monologue?
He was a funny dude during that 20-minute monologue.
Okay. Sometimes he's not. You're very
You got to demonstrate.
combative.
You got to demonstrate consistency.
Okay,
You got to give me
consistency.
consistency.
Okay,
You give me some consistency, I'll let you drop the ball a couple times here and there. That's fine.
Okay.
But as far as consistency,
It's a tough job.
No.
John Oliver guy. He's got a tough job.
I think it's incredibly tough. I think comedians don't get enough credit.
I'm not sure
for
he's
how
even a
tough.
real comedian.
What
I
do you
mean,
mean?
is he a stand-up? Does John Oliver do stand-up?
Is that the barometer for being a comedian? Stand up?
For us?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
Stand up to me terrifies me. The thought of ever having to, like, keep in mind, I'll get in front of a million people and talk all day long, but the thought of stand up. See, I get to cloak some of my humor in seriousness, right? So it's easier, right? I can do little stuff here and there, and like, oh, he's kind of funny. Well, no, it's only because it's contrasting against something that's serious and you don't expect the humor.
Do you remember the way you felt before you walked into that shooting range and those guns were going off and you're like, holy shit, it's really happening?
Yeah.
Now, think about how you feel now. Well, you walk into the range like, I go to the range.
Yeah.
I go to the range all the time. You know, especially when I was rifle hunting. I would go to the range at least once a month.
Yeah.
And you know, got used to it. You go, you hear the bang, 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 you put your fucking headphones on.
Yeah.
You just walk up, you say hi to everybody that you see there all the time. Everybody's super polite at the range. That's one thing, man.
Yeah.
People are polite as fuck at the range because everybody around you has the ability to kill you. They're just not. Everybody around you, especially when, I was in the rifle section. I've got a 300 Win Mag. I'll blow a fucking hole.
You shooting
the
that
side.
indoor or outdoors?
Outdoors.
Okay.
Outdoors.
I was like, you
Jesus Christ, that's a goddamn cannon.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody around you's got one of these things too. Everybody can kill everybody. And everybody's like, hey man, how you doing? What's up? How's everybody doing? Everybody's super friendly. Everybody's shaking hands.
There's a mutual respect there.
But it's interesting. That's an interesting. I mean, there's a weird statement that gets thrown about a lot of times that a well-armed society is a polite society.
There were 2 times in my life where I felt vehemently insecure. The first time I carried a gun out of my house in my first MMA class.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. But look, what I was going to say is when you go to the gun range a bunch of times, then it becomes normal. It becomes life. That's what stand-up is.
Gotcha.
Same thing. I mean, you still can eat plates of dicks on stage on occasion. It can go south, and it's terrible. It's one of the worst feelings
your
ever.
bit about Texas, fucking dead on and hilarious.
Oh, were you there?
No, I just saw it.
Which bit
I
about
saw it
Texas?
online.
Which bit?
Where you were basically
About Buc-ee's or
No,
the
about-
lions?
yeah,
about
about
the
the-
tigers.
about-
People that keep the tigers in
keep
the
tigers in the yard. Yeah.
That shit's true.
And,
There's-
you basically talking about we need these people.
Yes. If shit goes south, we're not fighting wars with people from Santa Monica. That is true, man. The people who have never been to Texas do not understand. That is the America of America.
We don't play.
No,
We do
Texas
not
doesn't play.
We are the most arrogant some bitches on the planet.
It's also like when people think of America, like overseas, they think of like these fucking crazy people with guns that have jacked up trucks that are driving too fast. The girls have big tits. The guys are fucking crazy. That's what we think of. That's Texas.
Yeah.
Like, that's not America
Now,
as a whole. It's Texas is the most exaggerated form of it.
Texas houses the most exaggerated form of that.
Yes.
But
Well, there's a lot of cool people in Texas.
yeah, Texas is way more diverse.
Some of my
People give
best
it credit
friends
for
live
it.
in
Yeah,
Austin, which is like super left-leaning.
Austin is like California in Texas.
It's a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think it's a little cooler and it's smaller. But it's the thing I said about Texas that's true is there's more tigers in captivity in Texas than there are in all of the wild of the world. More tigers in private collections. That's fucking true. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, I have to figure out a way to make this funny. Because it's the craziest fucking statistic I've ever heard in my life. In people's yards.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I grew up my entire life in Texas wanting a cheetah. Like, I'm not bullshitting
fucking
you.
cheetah.
I want a cheetah,
Why'd
dude.
you want a cheetah?
Man, and they're beautiful, man.
They are beautiful.
They're beautiful, man. And just watching. The funny thing is, I'd get a cheetah and put it in the yard, no bigger than this room, and then expect to see the beauty of it running.
Right. Well, you know what's also fucked up? I don't think you're allowed to like just feed them animals. I don't think you're allowed to just let loose a goat and have the cheetah tackle the goat and fuck it up. I think you have to feed them meat. You know,
mean, like already cured
yeah,
and
I don't
processed.
think you're allowed to
stuff
have
like that.
some Wild Kingdom shit go down in your yard. I don't think they allow that.
I don't know. You did say we only have 3 pages of law, so if it's not in those 3 pages,
Don't say shit about tigers. Order it up, dude. Order it up.
You know, the funny thing about it is when I got into firearms, 'cause I lived in Texas my whole life, and I went 23 years without ever shooting a gun, touching a gun.
Right.
And when I got into it, the first thing I wanted to do was shoot competition.
Right.
And so when you shoot competition,
Do you do those competitions like John Wick style where you go through bang, 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 thing pops up, bang, bang, bang?
yeah, 3-gun. They call it 3-gun.
3-gun.
Yeah.
How's
So
it- what is
basically,
it?
3-gun consists of three different platforms: a rifle, shotgun, and a handgun.
So how does this competition work?
So basically, they just set up. It's basically set up various courses where you have to utilize one of those 3 platforms. Some of the courses you utilize all 3, and so it's just, and then you're set to a timer. You got to clear the course as fast as possible.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the clearing the course is is there like walls that you have to look behind?
Oh
or-
yeah, no, it's only limited by your imagination.
Did you ever see that shit where Keanu Reeves was preparing for John Wick 2? Did
Yeah,
you
I
see
was
that
there.
video? Oh, you were there.
Well, so I was there not for that particular video that went viral, but I was there one day when he was training, and so I met him after the fact.
How is he?
Different.
How is he different?
He's spacey.
Spacey.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but not in a bad way. It's a very, very calm energy.
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
That's how he handles being that famous.
Gotcha.
He
And
just shuts off.
I picked up on it immediately.
Yeah.
And
That
it
dude's-
wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing.
You got to realize he's the Matrix guy.
Yeah.
That's some over the top fame. He hit that Johnny Depp, Tom Cruise level of fame and then just became this super chill, mellow guy that can just like go through crowds. That guy sits on the subway by himself. No, like
That's freaking awesome.
yeah, but there's no obvious outward displays of wealth from him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's insanely wealthy.
Yeah,
but when you see him, he's dressed like me.
Yeah.
He's got like a regular watch on and sneakers. He's normal as fuck, man.
Yeah.
It's real weird. Like he's figured out a way to avoid, like there he is right there on the fucking subway, just chilling. You know, and he looks like a totally normal dude.
I look like fucking me.
Yeah, well, and people freak out. They're like, is that? No, can't be. Like, people ignore him because he's figured out a way to just sort of
disappear
blend in.
plain sight.
And then even if you talk to him, he's just normal. Like, everybody that I know that's met him has said the dude's like totally, look at it. He lets his chick sit down, you know? He said, do you want to sit down? Go ahead. Boom. And he just stands up. Look at, I mean, even the way he's not, no bodyguards.
You know what's interesting about his demeanor and how like he doesn't have this sense of entitlement. And I'm bringing it back to the gun thing a little bit. The first time I carried a gun, remember I told you those were the times where I felt more insecure was my first day in MMA and carrying a gun for the first time. But carrying that gun for the first time made me realize, holy shit, I'm not the only one. Right? So it actually humbled me, and from the standpoint that knowing that you don't know who you're dealing with. And when you carry a firearm on you, you have the ability to go from 0 to 100 like that. And so you develop a respect for that. Also, you start to develop a respect for life as well.
Right.
Because you understand how fragile, you start to realize how fragile it is.
Right.
And so for me, I actually became more docile. Like, I don't get road rage. Because I understand, and because I live in Texas, you don't do that.
Yeah, it's not smart.
No, it's not. But I also know that, like, there's so much responsibility that comes with carrying a firearm. It's unreal. And so for people who go out of the means to learn to do it and be able to do it, like, there's a certain level of respect you have to have for it. Because it comes with a lot. There's certain places you can't go, certain things you can't do, things you have to be cognizant of. Like, so I actually started staying away from certain places because I knew I had a gun on me. And I never want to have to be put in a situation to actually have to go for it.
Now, do you wear a gun all the time?
If I can do it legally, I am.
Really?
Yeah.
And what is the idea behind that? Is that, like, it's better to have it and not to need it than to need it and not to have it?
Yeah. It's no different. It's literally just a part of my routine. Watch, keys, phone, wallet, gun.
One in the chamber or no?
One in chamber.
Always.
Yeah.
Safety on, one in the chamber.
The gun I usually carry they don't have external safeties. It's just, I carry in a holster. So if you carry in a holster, it shouldn't be an issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you just want to be really, really ready.
Yeah. Well, see,
You don't want to have to.
No. And see, here's the thing. That's progressive. Like, I wasn't always like that. I started off not carrying with one in the chamber.
When did you start putting one in the chamber?
When I started understanding and trusting the mechanics of a firearm. Because when I started carrying, I knew about guns. I didn't trust the mechanics. Right.
So that extra step, you don't feel like it's necessary of, like.
No. What do you mean in terms of, like, having
Extra
a rack
step,
gun?
yeah.
Well, I understand that. I understand. So I started doing training, right? And I started training with guns and self-defense and stuff like that. And I started realizing, so the gun isn't an end-all be-all, right? It's just a tool that I carry with me that could possibly save my life. I could still die with a gun on me.
For sure.
Right? But I started weighing the disadvantages and the advantages of having one in the chamber, right? I might find myself in a situation where, you know what? I have time to, I'm behind here, and I have time to rack it and do what I need to do. There may be other times where I won't. But if I already have a round in the chamber, those times where I will have the time and not have the time won't make a difference because there's already one in the chamber ready to go.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, as I got more comfortable with the gun and realized, holy crap, the gun never just went off on its own because there was an inherent fear there, right? It's like you don't want the gun to go off while it's in your pants.
Do you have, like, one of them Kydex holsters that's form-fitted to the gun? Okay.
Yeah, I have tons of holsters. I have a box full of holsters.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, because I review guns and review gear and stuff, so I'm constantly switching, which is a gift and a curse because, I never perfect any platform, but you put pretty much any gun in my hand, I can use it decently.
Now, when things happen, whenever there's a mass shooting or something, immediately people want to blame gun owners or people that want to protect gun owners and specifically NRA members. This comes down on you sometimes.
This always comes down.
It does, right?
Yeah.
Like they point to you. You're the problem.
It comes down on me.
The people that want guns and the people that don't want regulations and don't want, additional screening.
But yeah, because you got to think about it. So, like, the figureheads, when you start talking about Wayne, and so people go after them clearly, right? But then also you have the personalities of the brand, which is me, Dana, and
Dana Lash.
Dana Lash, right? She's an official spokesperson, right?
She's a very nice lady. I met her.
Exactly. And then you have Cam Edwards.
Been on his show as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what tends to happen is I get it a lot via social because that's how I built my brand, right? I built my brand through social. And so most people will, when they can't descend, like, I don't think Wayne LaPierre has a Twitter page. You know what I mean? He doesn't have an Instagram account.
Right.
So
he's probably in a bunker somewhere.
Nah, no, he's not.
Counting ammo.
he's more normal than you realize.
I believe you. Well, what you are is an interesting version of the NRA. It's like, oh, this is the NRA too. Like, this is a kind of a new thing.
It's multifaceted. Like, I dare anyone to go to the NRA annual meetings, and then if you can, I don't know how secluded it is, go to the board meeting that they have at the NRA meetings. You'll be surprised. They have every race you can think of, different sexualities, you name it.
Oh, I believe you. Look, I was in
And-
the NRA forever. I just I let my membership lapse like a year and a half ago. But I was in the NRA because I just felt like I know people that are just like, we've got to get rid of the guns. I'm like, man, I don't think that's going to do it. And I don't think that's going to stop anything.
And I ask people this all the time. I've done it on my show. I call it the big red button question, right? So you put a big red button, I ask them, if I put a big red button in the middle of the table, if you push this button, all the guns on the planet disappear. Would you do it? And I get various answers, but I wouldn't do it. And people are like, why? Like, why would you not? That'd be the end of violence. I'm like, not really.
It's also the end of defense.
Exactly.
Especially when you're talking about military. I mean, if you don't have guns, like, what are we going to fight with swords and bows and arrows and shit?
You know what the interesting thing about that too is a lot of people on the other side will say, they were like, why? The same people will say, well, why do you need an AR-15? And then the inverse, when I say the Second Amendment is actually not about hunting, it's about defending ourselves from a tyrannical government, domestic or foreign. They're like, oh, you think your little stupid guns are going to be able to defend against the government? I'm like, well, then why don't you give me the guns that the government has then? And then they get quiet because they realize the contradiction in what they're stating.
Well, it's also the government. When you say the government, like protect us against the government, we are the government. The government's filled with people.
Yeah.
Like the cops are us. The problem is this separation of us. If you gave me a red button and said, could I end all senseless violence by hitting that button? I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when people say it's a guns problem, I say, do you know that London passed New York City for the first time since 1800 in homicides, and they did it with fucking knives. With knives, to the point where that goofball mayor of London, that dork, on his Twitter page said there's no reason to carry a knife. If you get caught carrying a knife, you'll be prosecuted under the fullest extent of the law.
But this is
a fucking knife.
But
I've got a knife. Oh, I don't have it on me right now. But I have a knife on me all the time.
This is the same country that utilizes the shining example of what we should be doing in America.
Exactly. And they have more murders in London from knives.
And here's the funny thing about that too. And so they have an uptick in acid attacks. I'm sorry, I think I'd rather be shot.
Yeah, that acid
is
thing
crucial.
rough. Well, that's a thing that people are doing to ex-wives and shit too.
Yeah, that's. I mean,
that is dark. That is some inhuman shit. But it's also all of this stuff. It comes down to like what makes a fully developed person. Instead of looking at what's available to a fully developed person and what would allow a fully developed person to commit horrific crimes, what turns a person into that? We should be looking at from the root to the fully grown. Like, what is the process that allows someone to become a mass shooter? What's the process that allows someone to throw acid in someone's face?
Man, because clearly I have to frame everything through my perspective because, I know it the best. But, like, even for me, like, I said it in video before, if I ever had to pull my gun and shoot someone to take a life, I'm gonna need therapy.
Yeah.
I am. Because I value life that much. I value it to...
Right, but do you have children?
No, I don't.
Let me tell you something, man. If you had a kid and some guy was trying to hurt your daughter and you shot him, I think you'd sleep like a baby.
You know what? That's funny, interesting you say that because when I talk to women about firearm ownership, right? Like none of the girls I've ever been in a relationship with were like pro-gun, right? But over time, dealing with me, I mean, when you walk into my house and there's 5 rifles on the table, you kind of just have to get acclimated. But in dealing with women who start off initially as anti, a lot of them talk about not wanting guns because they can't see themselves taking a life. But the moment I ask them, would they take a life to protect a child? Oh yeah, I'm blowing that sucker away.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that works, and I felt like I agree with you. I'd be the same way.
To preserve innocence.
Exactly.
To preserve a child. And, that whatever it is that turns a child into some monster that could shoot up a school, I think that's what needs to be examined. I mean, and this is not a part of the narrative. It's not a part of the discussions. No one's bringing it up. All people bring up is the event themselves, the gun violence. And we need to keep the tools away from people. I just think the tools are one part of the problem. I definitely think that you should, if there is a way, we should figure out a way to keep psychopaths from owning guns. But how do you determine whether or not someone's a psychopath?
Until they do something psychopathic.
Yeah, and then someone will talk about, well, Australia, they had one mass shooting in the 1990s. They took all the guns. There's 18 people in Australia. It's as big as the United States. There's less people.
Not to mention crime went up after they did that.
Did it?
Violent crime went up when they did that. That's what people don't want to talk about. And you're right. Like, people forget context.
Yeah.
They're like 2 people in Australia.
Well, do you know about there's one town in Georgia where firearm ownership is mandatory.
I do remember hearing about
And they
that.
made it mandatory, and violent crime and everything dropped radically. Break-ins dropped radically. They made it mandatory. Everybody has to have a gun, and everybody was like, fuck crime.
Think about it.
I need to find a new way to make a living.
Well, because most dudes who are engaged in crime, right? Like, of course, you have your sickos who just love the violence, right? Most of them are just crimes of opportunity,
Yeah.
right? So they're looking for victims. They're looking for easy victims, easy targets.
Right.
If you know you're going to deal with someone who possibly is going to kill you, they don't want to die.
Right.
Which is why you've seen a lot of these videos with these home invasions where you watch when the actual homeowner has a firearm. Once the bullets start flying, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're taking off. Nobody wants to get shot.
Right.
So it always boggles my mind when people are like, well, you don't need a gun for this or you don't need a gun for that. I'm like, no, I do. And they're like, well, the chances of you ever needing it and using it.
That's a stupid argument.
It's incredibly moronic.
Sure, the chances are you've gone through life right now. However old you are when I'm talking to you, you haven't been shot. So the chances are 100% that you didn't need it. Right, but that doesn't mean you won't need it in the future. That's a crazy conversation. I don't think the conversation should be about the tools.
Yeah.
I really think the conversation should be about what makes a person capable of doing that. I mean, if the conversation is what makes a person such a fucking nut that they have so many guns that they don't know what to do with, you have so many guns you don't even know how many you have. Is that bad? I don't know. You seem like a reasonable guy. I'm not worried about you.
But even then, I can only use one gun at a time. I only have two hands.
I get that, but the idea is like, what if someone breaks in your house and steals your guns? I'm sure you have been a safe, but if somebody breaks in your house and steals your guns, like what then?
So that's my fault now that somebody wants to break the law and break into my house?
No, the idea is like access. Now you're giving access.
Yeah, but you're limiting.
It's a very different argument. Very different.
Yeah,
argument.
yeah, exactly. But you're still. But that fundamentally goes back to the idea that people want to undervalue. This is a constitutional right. Right.
Yeah.
And so what we find ourselves doing is finding ways to limit that right because of the few bad people in our country.
Right.
And I just think that's the wrong way to go about it because we're devolving ourselves down to a point where we're not going to have any rights left because there are a couple of bad people here who might do something bad with the rights that you have.
I think it's the wrong way to go about it too. But if we had no violence in this country, if something happened, human beings evolved, if our switch changed and there's no more violence, would you still want to have guns?
Yes.
You want to have them for recreation because you enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something people don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You're like, I always tell people, if you've never shot a gun, if you've never gone to a gun range, you should because it is actually fun. It's fun. Now, if you do that activity and you're not thinking about hurting someone and all you're thinking about is focusing on the target, trigger control, all that stuff, is that bad?
I mean, we do a thing on my show. We call it athletic shooting, right? So my background before I got into guns was sports. I was into basketball, football. I ran cross country, track, you name it. So when I got into guns, so my dream was to go to the NBA when I was younger, right? Clearly that didn't happen and it wasn't going to. But, there was that athleticism still in me. So what we did on the show when we were talking about coming up with a different shooting competition was how do I incorporate some of that athleticism into shooting, right? Which is essentially, by and large, a lot of running and just shooting in different positions and so forth and so on. And so when we're doing that, I'm not thinking about shooting a person. That's not the type of shooting I'm doing.
Right, you're doing target shooting.
You're doing target shooting with some athleticism involved in it. And so, and people undervalue that. Like, it's kind of like, how can you not see that these are other ways that firearms are used? Which is why I started my brand, The Pew Pew Life, right? Pew Pew Life is predicated around
PEW. For people who don't understand, that's what people who use guns a lot.
Exactly.
Go pew
It's a firearm lifestyle. Yeah.
And out here doing #pew pew.
Yeah. Because it's think about it. When we were kids, it was all so simple, right? Play cops and robbers with a gun. Pew 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 pew. We do that.
Right.
And so I want to capture the recreation involved in playing cops and robbers as a kid, but then also understanding the very definitive and distinction between the good guys and the bad guys. Right?
Right.
The people who live this lifestyle are good people. They enjoy guns for recreation. They also understand that we live in a world where not everybody's good.
Right.
Right? So we also own guns for our own self-defense. And so it's this culmination of this lifestyle that comes together, and we appreciate guns in a way that some people think is perverse. But how is it any different than me obsessing over the Aston Martin DBS for the last 20 years? is that perverse? It's still a mechanical item.
Yeah, it's
Still
the potential for violence is what scares people.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, when a guy kills 86 people in Nice with a truck,
Right. No, it's a good point. I mean, it is a very good point, and no one's trying to outlaw trucks.
No.
But it's this thing that we have in this country where we have more guns than we have human beings, and that's that disturbs people.
yeah, because they inherently vilify the firearm,
Right.
Which is why I have another hashtag that I call "Still Waiting."
Still waiting for what?
Still waiting for my gun to jump up on its own and kill somebody.
Yeah.
Right. It is relatively tongue in cheek, but at the same time, what it does is it transfers the focus. And in it, I say, when a drunk driver gets behind the wheel and kills someone, we don't blame the vehicle for it. We blame the driver.
Right.
All right. So when somebody goes out and commits violence with a firearm, why aren't we focusing on the people who are doing it instead of focusing on the firearm?
Well, I think we should certainly be focusing on the people. As we said, we should certainly be focusing on what happens to a person that makes them develop into the type of person that can go into a movie theater and shoot it up, like the Aurora, Colorado guy.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because it's a conversation that we don't have,
Right.
honestly. And I don't have the answers. I can think of several things. You know, the easy answer for me is to say is our culture, right? We maybe have a culture that facilitates this, or, you know, we have a situation where there are people who do slip between the cracks and no one pays attention to them.
There's certainly some of that.
Yeah, and I do think there is a lack
You
of.
can't, right, pay attention to everybody.
You can't, but then also I think there's, I was raised by a single parent mother, right? And my mother overcompensated when raising me because she understood the limitations of her being a woman raising a young man, right? So she was unnecessarily hard on me. My mom has zero tolerance for my emotions, absolutely zero. So what she taught me growing up was how to deal with adversity, taught me how to deal with failure, how to get past those things, taught me how to be self-assured. And so what I think we're lacking to a degree in this country is people not having the coping mechanisms to deal with failure or to deal with rejection. You know, some get it worse than others. I agree.
There's definitely that. There's definitely people that feel like they're outsiders and they want to flip the board over. They're losing the game and they just want to flip the board over. And that seems like that Parkland kid. I mean, there were kids that were worried about him before this ever happened, and that his whole thing was that his life was shit, and he wanted other people to experience that. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, and the hard thing about it too is now I realize, and it just came to my mind. I think sometimes I don't even want to talk about the mental health aspect of it in this particular case of the Parkland shooter because I just want to relegate him to evil.
Right.
Right. Because it pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like you're taking innocent lives because you feel bad. Go in a corner and shoot yourself, if that's the case.
There's a romanticized version of that, too, where people just want to take everybody out, take all the people out that you saw that were doing well while you were struggling. There's that.
But the world always flips, man.
Oh, yeah. Well,
like,
if it flips if you've got a good attitude and you're a healthy person like yourself. But if you're mentally ill and your life has been just tormented and abused and just you've mental health issues and you're all fucked up, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that the problem lies in the individuals that are capable of committing that and how they become that.
Because you make a great point. Because you got to think like what mindset do you have to be in to walk down the school hall and just shoot people,
shoot kids,
just shoot them, innocently. It's fucking gross.
Yeah, whether it's Sandy Hook or what any one of these things, like you have to be fucked up to do that. And how many people are running around that are like 3/4 fucked up? Yeah. They only need a few bad things to go wrong. And relatively speaking, when you think about the fact that there's 300+ million people in this country, these are relatively few people that are capable and that actually act on such a horrific act. But what do you think can be done to stop this stuff? Have you thought about it?
Yeah. I think about it all the time. It's a harder question for me to ask than to come up with ways of why we don't need gun control.
Right.
You know, because that's it's hard.
I think so too.
Especially when I'm taking gun control off the table because people are always saying, you guys don't want to move 1 inch. Well, I was like, yeah, because we've been moving an inch for the last 20, 30 years.
Also, the problem is it's a fucked up argument because the people that are holding the guns are not necessarily the people that are doing these things. Mm-hmm. You're trying to attack the vast majority of gun owners are not committing crimes with their guns.
They're not. So when I think about what can we do to stop different types of shooting, for instance, let's start with the type of shootings that happen the most.
Right.
Gang violence.
Right.
So if you look at the statistics, you think, oh my gosh, America's a war zone. Right? 30,000 people a year die. And then the vast majority of it that is remaining as actual homicides is gang violence. So then we have a gang problem. We don't have a gang problem in this country. We have a socioeconomic problem in very specific areas in this country. Right? Because I just came from Southside Chicago, where I started in Hyde Park, where Obama used to live, and then drove a few minutes into an area that looked like a bomb went off. They don't have the violence in Hyde Park that they had in that area. Why? They had the same access to illegal guns. They don't have the same problem because there's a difference in economics, and no one wants to address that.
Right.
If I'm a kid growing up in that neighborhood and I'm going to a school that's shitty, right? They don't give a damn about me. I lucked up and was able to go to good schools, right? I went to schools where my teachers cared. I went to schools where teachers pushed me when I was slacking off. You know, I had the ability to take out loans to go to a good law school. You know, I had those abilities. If I'm a kid growing up in this environment and I can't find refuge in my school, I can't find refuge at home because my mom's working 3 or 4 or 5 jobs, so she's never there. Where am I going to go find where am I going to find that parental influence? I'm going to find it on the streets. So now I'm on the streets being led by people who grew up in the same exact conditions that I grew up in. And so now I'm like, okay, well, I have to make money. What am I going to do for money? Well, then there's the narco economy very conveniently right there for me, right? Sell drugs. So now I'm staying on the corner selling drugs. I got to protect my product, right? If I don't, someone's going to take it from me. So what do? I get a gun and I carry a gun. Now I'm stuck in a situation. Now I'm just stuck in this violent loop, right? That feeds on itself. And so now I'm stuck defending myself against the guy who's shooting at me, trying to take my stuff, and I'm shooting back at him. Maybe not because I'm trying to take his stuff, but because he's trying to take mine, right? So that's where you get that violence that comes from those particular areas. Now, if we would have sat back and said, okay, we have hyper-concentrated areas in this country. This isn't widespread. It's hyper-concentrated communities in this country that are dealing with this, that are also the result of the vast majority of our gun violence. If we sat back and thought about from a social economic standpoint, how do we fix this? What do we do? How do we present opportunity? I'm not saying go in there and just hand out stuff, but how do we fix this from the standpoint of improving our schools? How is it I can drive 5 minutes one direction and have a school that has everything you can name, and then drive in the opposite direction? The school can barely have textbooks to give to their kids. Think about that.
Yeah.
So why aren't we focusing our energy on building that up versus talking about, oh, we need to get the guns off the streets? You did that. You have that in Chicago. You have every gun law imaginable in Chicago. But yet Southside Chicago still looks the way that it does, still has the violence that it does, right? So if we provide, when you give people something to lose or to live for, they don't throw away life so easily. Plain and simple. So if my socioeconomic status is in the dirt, I don't have a problem looking at another kid down the street and shooting at him and taking his life. I don't have anything. I don't have anything to lose. But if we would focus our attention in fixing that, same way we talk about the mental health issue with respect to mass shootings and school shootings, we wouldn't have to worry about the guns because we wouldn't have people wanting to do those things or have the capability to do those things, right? So then that deals with that vast majority of the violence that we have there, focusing that energy in fixing those communities.
I agree with you 100%. And we've talked about this many, many times in this show, that I think that if you wanted to make America a better place, one of the best ways to do it is to make it easier for someone to succeed. Make it easy and stop pretending that it's a level playing field.
Yeah, because
I didn't grow up in a level playing field. I got lucky.
I did
You
too.
got lucky. A lot of
Absolutely.
people did. And if you go to somewhere like the South Side of Chicago and you don't realize that you got lucky, you're blind.
Yeah.
If you want to, what's the best way to make America stronger? Less losers, less people who lose.
Yeah.
How is that? Well, give them more of a chance.
Yes.
Give them more of an opportunity and give them guidance-ship, community centers, clean up the streets, fix the buildings. But that's a lot of fucking money that we're spending right now in Afghanistan and Iraq and building
then-
missiles and all kinds of crazy shit that we're not putting any money into that.
But then who do we hold accountable? So for instance,
do we?
Like if we talk about the inner cities, for instance, they've been democratically run for ages now. the local leadership there is Democratic.
Right, but there's no money.
There-
The problem is there's
Well,
no
the money's
money.
going somewhere.
Yeah.
Look at Chicago.
It's just not enough. I mean, the money's going into the areas where people are wealthy, and that's
Which
what
is
they're
true.
supporting. They're not supporting these impoverished areas. And
But and you know what? You're absolutely right. So if that's the case, and we all understand that, and you know that, stop selling this bullshit about gun control. Then,
well, let's just
say
talk,
that.
That's just one aspect.
Oh,
of
no,
gun
I was- yeah, I was
control,
gonna- I was
and
moving to the
agree with
next
you.
one, yeah.
I agree with you there. So in that sense, when it comes to gun violence, it's very complex. When it comes to gang violence,
Mm-hmm.
it's very complex. And I agree with you that there's no other way to stop that than to fix the inner cities where people are just in that cycle of constant poverty and crime, and it's all they see around them, so it becomes normalized.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
now let's talk about
mass shootings.
Mass shootings, right? So get rid of gun-free zones. No one wants to hear that. Get rid of gun-free zones. If you're not going to establish a perimeter outside of a building where I can go, don't tell me I can't bring my gun in there. A sign on the window is not stopping somebody from coming into the building. We've seen it time and time and time and time again. If the guns were the problems, we would have a mass shooting at every gun show every single day, but we don't. Why? The same reason you pointed out why that one place in Georgia, when they said everybody had to have a gun, crime went down.
People don't want to hear that, though. They
don't.
don't want to hear that the answer to gun violence is everyone has a gun.
Now,
That's such a convenient answer for a guy like you who
it's
has
very convenient.
so many guns you can't
Absolutely.
count.
But here, let's look at the alternative. We've been living in it, right?
Right.
And we're acknowledging that there's a problem.
Right.
So why aren't we entertaining the fact that maybe that is the case?
Right, but do you think that, like school shootings, for example, do you think that these teachers being armed would be the answer?
All right. So
Or do you think there should be armed security on the campus?
I say it should be multi-layered, right? Because if you really want to put things into perspective, and the NRA didn't add about this, and people got pissed off, but it's the truth. Whatever school the president's kids go to, they are guarded by guns.
Right,
That school is protected by guns,
right.
right? Anything we hold valuable in this country is protected with guns.
No one is more anti-gun than Hollywood. When you hear about any sort of crime or gun violence, the left-wing people in Hollywood are the most vocal, the most virtue signaling, the quickest to jump on their pedestal. Meanwhile, what percentage of their fucking movies involve gun violence? And if you look at the Academy Awards, did you see the security at the Academy Awards? You see all these left-leaning, liberal actors being protected by people with flak jackets on, carrying guns with fingers outside the triggers. I mean, dogs.
But
it's crazy.
You know what it is, though? It's a loss of touch with reality.
Well, they're also insulated and protected.
Well, that's
part of it.
Because in their mindset goes like this. Well, I have security guards. I mean, Kim Kardashian's the biggest. I did a video on that, so that was the first thing that came to mind.
Biggest what?
She's biggest hypocrite on that, right?
Well,
Because
she's a dum-dum.
yeah, of course, but she also influences a ton of people.
Yeah.
Right?
That's unfortunate. But
Exactly.
Steve Harvey had her on Family Feud. And they were on Family Feud. The Kardashians in the West were talking about how fucking stupid Kim was.
But we know this, though. That's the
Yes.
crazy thing.
Well, there's no
know
incentive
this.
for her to be intelligent.
There isn't.
I mean, she's good at making money. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't fault her for that. Hey, make your money, boo-boo. But but at the end of the day, she still has access to scores of young, influential minds.
I understand that. That's unfortunate, but there's nothing we could do about that.
There isn't, but
Other than you point out the fact that she's a dum-dum.
pretty much, yeah.
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 She's not a terrible person. There's
She's
way
not.
worse
I
people in the
don't
world.
think it's I don't know the woman.
I just don't. Well, I've heard her talk. I just don't think she's really interested in expanding her mind. I just don't think that that's something that's
It's not beneficial. But
that's her.
here's the thing about that,
prerogative.
though. The mindset, though, is there are people who we pay to carry guns.
Right.
I don't need to carry them, therefore you don't either.
So
Right.
what you're saying about her is that she is anti-gun. She talks about being anti-gun, yet she's constantly surrounded by people who have guns. That's a fact.
Absolute fact. So
It's
you
an
can't.
absolute fact.
So then you can't turn around and tell me that no, you don't need a firearm.
Right. Of course
then-
you don't, bitch. You
well
got
then, yeah.
7-foot tall dudes strapped to the fucking gills. all around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's man, it's frustrating because it's like, I get it. I would love to have 8 dudes standing out here with AR-15 slung over their shoulders, ready to protect me at a given notice. If I
Right.
could afford it, I'd pay for it and not do it. The funny thing is, I'd still carry a gun on me because they can't always be exactly where I am.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Dude, that's a paranoid way to live, though, isn't it?
What difference does it make? Think about it. How much does it affect me? I wake up every day, put a gun on my hip, and go out and do the exact same thing I would do if I didn't have a gun.
But you don't think about it. So in a sense, you feel like you're not paranoid. 'cause
I'm
you're
not
thinking
paranoid.
about it.
No, it's not. I'm not. And no more paranoid than any person that has a fire extinguisher in their house. Think about it. It's like I don't walk around like, oh my god, who's coming to get me? That's paranoia.
Right.
What all I'm doing is being prepared. Right? Now there could be levels of preparedness that you start to hit diminishing returns where it starts to be like. It starts to take away from your quality of life. But me putting a gun on my hip and just going about my business, that doesn't interfere with my life enough to say, you know what, it's not quite worth it.
You know, it's funny that what you said about like humility and that you're like more calm and relaxed since you've been involved with guns. The same thing happens with jiu-jitsu and martial arts training in particular, but jiu-jitsu in particular because you get strangled so much.
My neck hurts right now because I was rolling with a guy just before I came up like last week.
Yeah.
And man, it's such a beautiful sport.
It's beautiful, but it also lets you know like your place in the food chain, especially when you first start out.
No, like you start to realize you really honestly can't call out an elite human until it's too late.
What do you mean?
So before I started really kind of getting into, like MMA, so forth and so on, I thought I could spot out the guy you don't want to mess with.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I went to class, and then my coach started pairing me with different people, and I'm like, holy crap! Like if I would have seen this dude just walking down the sidewalk, I'm like, yeah, I can handle him. And now I'm rolled up in a pretzel with nuts in my face.
Yeah, nerd assassins.
You know
There's a
what I
lot of nerd assassins out there.
Yeah.
Man, at 10th Planet, we got a whole fucking army of them. They're like computer dorks, and they'll kill you with their legs.
Yep.
They'll wrap their legs around your neck and choke you to sleep, and you can't even stop it from happening.
Nothing.
It's crazy.
Nothing, man. And then I always get stuck, and I'm gonna overpower him, and I'm like, nah.
Yeah, you're better off being weak, believe it or not. The best jiu-jitsu is weak man's jiu-jitsu. I always say if you're going to learn jiu-jitsu, learn it from a small guy.
Yeah.
Because you learn from a small guy, they've never been able to cheat, meaning they've never been able to muscle their way out of things.
Gotcha.
They've always had to have perfect technique. Yeah, technique's everything when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I mean,
Gotcha.
literally, you have to have some strength for sure, and strength with technique is the ultimate.
Gotcha.
But perfect technique is where it's at, and you get that from like little guys like Barrett Yoshida, Eddie Bravo, Hoyler Gracie. The smaller guys are the ones that you want to learn from because they've never been the big guy. The big guys are like top game guys, the smash pass guys. Those guys are just relying on horsepower and leg strength and shit. That's not the way to learn. The way to learn is to go around things.
Gotcha.
You know?
And the funny thing about that is, do you know why I started doing it?
Why? Someone said, "What if they take your gun away, bro?"
No one said that. I said it to myself.
Oh, right.
I said it to myself because I almost felt I was over dependent on it. Because remember, the gun is a tool.
Mm-hmm. Do you carry a knife too?
I used to.
He's like, that's bitch.
I used to, but I float. I'm in this weird space where like my jeans are kind of sort of a little too tight and not like, so they're not quite skinny jeans, but it's kind of like after a certain point, I have too much stuff going on in my pants.
I got the answer for you, my friend.
Oh, here you go.
It's called a fanny pack.
See. You know they're not gonna let me get away with a fanny pack.
What the fuck are you talking about? I wear one of these bitches
with a
every
fanny
day.
pack.
HigherPrimate.com. You can go buy one right now. I'll give you one. Do we have some here? Would you never wear this? You would never wear this?
I'm down to try anything.
Come on, man.
Well, tactically.
I got my
Tactically.
money, I got a wallet. Some of them, they have like ones that are tactical ones. They rip them open.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, you have a tactical one. I'm all for it.
No, this is just a regular one. See, this you keep your shit on you so you don't have your pockets all filled with shit. Oh,
See, here's
fuck,
my.
I do have a knife.
Here's my
That
fanny
was
pack.
wrong.
This is what I consider a fanny pack.
Oh, that's a little big.
Yeah, I know.
It's a little
But then
big,
again,
fella.
I'm the guy
But
who
if you carry it.
But I'm the guy who runs around with MacBook, iPad.
Right.
Because I have
You carry one everywhere?
pretty much if I can
are
bring
you-
it back because
are
I'm
you
constantly working. Yeah.
Right. What kind of stuff do you write?
I script pretty much 80 to 90% of my show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I write all the videos I do. I write them.
Do you write them and then put them on a teleprompter, or do you practice it out?
Sometimes it's straight off the top. Sometimes in teleprompter. It just depends what we feel is going to communicate the best to what we're
Right.
trying to achieve.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that shows work ethic for sure.
I mean, I I don't have a life.
You don't?
I really don't. All I do is work out, and eat.
So is these videos, is this
And
your
shoot.
entire life now?
For the most part, yeah.
In terms of like your occupation?
Exactly, yeah.
So you don't work as a lawyer?
I do a little bit. I still have dealings with a small firm in Houston. And then so other than that, just other investments and things that I have going on. That's about it.
So you were able to make a living off of these videos?
There was a time when you could do it on YouTube.
Right.
Not anymore.
Yeah, it's real recent, right?
Yeah,
like within
real
the last
recent.
6 or 7 months.
Well, actually, us gun guys started noticing that drop a long time ago. Like I'm talking about, we went from like to like half,
Yeah.
and then now it's like 70%. So and that
Decreased
happened,
revenue.
That happened like a couple years ago. Actually.
And how does that work in terms of like, do they pick certain videos that are just not eligible for monetization? Is that what it is?
No, before it was just a drop in organic reach. It just started like it wasn't anything formal.
So
We
they
just noticed
filtered
it.
you out.
Yeah, that's at least that's what I picked up on because I started noticing. I'm like, wait a minute, like, I mean, I wasn't living off the YouTube stuff, but I was like, it went like I just got my income cut in half. It's weird.
Yeah, well, there's been some people that have investigated this, and there's been some inside sources that have told people that they actively target conservatives, gun owners, redneck. They do it on Twitter. They do it at a lot of different places.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all.
They do it. It's 100%. Who's that guy, American Pravada guy, that did those undercover investigative reports? He sent a bunch of people into like bars and talked to Twitter engineers. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Now I will say this though, there are certain people in these places that are actually, they may not even agree with my stance, but I've talked to them and they'll help me out the best that they can. You know, some people on Facebook, some people at YouTube, so forth and so on. Because there are those individuals, you know, I call them ghost supporters in a sense because,
Right.
you know, they can't be too
course.
explicit about their, you know.
Yeah, you're not going to have just a complete uniform
Exactly.
left-wing ideology at any of these organizations.
all.
There's going to be some people but they get stuck in these groupthink environments like Google or wherever the fuck it is, and they can't speak out.
Which is unfortunate because I'm like, isn't this country was founded on the idea of having
Is this
types
it?
of discourse.
Project Veritas?
Veritas, yeah, I remember hearing about it.
Release undercover footage of Twitter employees and engineers and employees admitting that Twitter employees view everything you post on their servers, including private sex messages and dick pics.
See, that's why I don't send dick pics.
Damn it!
I never send
The
dick pics.
engineers also admit that Twitter analyzes this information to create a virtual profile of you, which they sell to advertisers. James O'Keefe has completed the book about the series entitled American Pravada, My Fight for the Truth in the Era of Fake News. Yeah. So this guy has sent a bunch of people to talk to like engineers, and I've seen the videos
Gotcha.
where they're explaining how they
The algorithm and
how
and all
they
that.
make it so that these people don't even know that people can't see their tweets.
I get it all the time. People send me to me all the time. Like, hey, you know, for some reason YouTube is forcing me to unfollow you. Like I thought I followed you, but then I'm not following you. And
I think some of that's paranoia, and
I
some
do.
of it is
Some of it is.
just
Some of it
accidents.
isn't. Yeah. But it still begs the question because the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Right. So like I know with Facebook, there was times where I was reaching millions of people with just a post, but then that got cut in half. But largely that was due to monetization. That was before Facebook was monetizing itself. So they wanted to they want you to pay to get access to your audience.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So that I don't like it. But it isn't like some deep secret kind of like, oh, I want to stifle your reach because you believe in this. Now there may be some of that going on, right? So I had, for instance, like I buy ads for my like merchandise that I sell on Facebook, right? Because if I just post a picture of it, my entire audience doesn't see it, right? And so somebody went through at Facebook and just deleted all of our ads. Like I spent a ton of money on ads, and they just disapproved them out of nowhere. And so then I called a contact, and it was like, no, that shouldn't have happened. And then they went back and put them back up. So sometimes it's even individualized.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just an individual who disagrees with everything you stand for, who has the power to do it.
Well, you remember when that guy did that with Trump?
Yeah, I
He
was just gonna
disabled
say.
his Twitter?
Yeah, he deleted it for a couple of days or
Yeah.
hours or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's definitely people that have that kind of power and they abuse it. I mean, you see that everywhere. You see that with moderators on message boards. You see that with, every time people have more power than you,
yeah.
and they go, I don't like this fucking guy. This guy talking about his guns. Fuck his ads, and they just yank them.
The weird thing is though, like I don't complain about it on my platform at all because no one cares.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time YouTube started demonetizing my videos for ads, I mentioned it. And a lot of my own people were like, good, I don't like those ads anyway. I'm like, you do realize I have to pay to get this stuff done, right?
Right.
Like, you know?
Well, no one seems to care until it comes and affects them.
Exactly.
They don't realize that essentially what they're doing is they're censoring you by diminishing the amount of money that you can make.
Yeah.
You know, you could say it's not real censorship, but it is censorship.
I mean, it's pretty much what I'm dealing with right now. So, for instance, right, my videos don't come out as consistently as like I do gun reviews. I'm known for my gun reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like my gun reviews to be very cinematic. I voiceover. I put thought into them. I write scripts out for my videos. The problem is too now, before where I could afford to hire someone to edit them, I can't. Right. And I need that now more than ever because now on the political front of the things, I'm running around, I'm traveling. That's why I always have my MacBook with me. I have to try to find places where I can try to edit a little bit and get things done. But then the same people who are like, we don't care about the ads on your videos and you making money from your videos are the same people like, why aren't you making videos as much as you used to? Well, I'm like, well, I don't have the money to pay someone to edit the videos in order to keep pumping them out the way I was doing it before. And I'm not going to give you sub-quality crap.
Right.
I could just toss a video together and just throw it out there.
Well,
but
it's just too much noise. You can't listen to all those people that are complaining and asking for things.
Which is true.
But I really do think that Twitter or YouTube rather is fucking up because they're opening up the door to a competitor that is really invested in free speech.
I disagree.
Really? How so?
It's the advertisers. They are at the mercy of the advertisers.
They are, but I know people over at YouTube. They are deciding what they want said and not said.
Gotcha.
And this is how I know. I brought up Jordan Peterson to this woman that worked at YouTube.
Which I'm a huge fan of.
And she said he's a troublemaker. And I said, how is he a troublemaker? She had no answer. She's a radical left wing, but not thoughtful. Not thoughtful. Like she doesn't have a good argument for this. And when you push back, she's used to being the boss at work. She's used to just dismissing you.
Yeah.
And when I was pushing back with her, like, why is that? Why is he a troublemaker?
Yeah.
Like, you tell me what's problematic about what he says. No answer to that. But yet able to dismissively say someone's a troublemaker when they're a very highly respected intellectual that has amazing points about a lot of different things, and it resonates with a lot of very, very smart people.
I think he's the Nietzsche of our time.
He's a very bright guy and a really good human. Yeah. When you meet him, he's a really good person. So for someone to say he's a troublemaker, like, okay. No, because he doesn't agree with you, and he's causing trouble with your organization because you're censoring people's views and viewpoints, and it's so convenient to label someone alt-right or, you know, I mean, this is what we're dealing with today. Like
I hate identity politics. It drives me insane.
It's crazy. It's crazy how many people flock to it too.
Because it's intellectually easier.
Very easy.
You know?
Yeah, it's very easy.
You can sit there and then you can just regurgitate all of the talking points that you have.
Yeah.
This is why I don't do well on cable news hits.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is, like, on this issue, I intellectualize it, right? Like the conversation we're having now. Mm-hmm. Like, I get the benefit. I love this because we could sit here.
Right.
If we need to think about something, you know what? You know, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You know, let me think about that for a little bit. Like, on cable news now, you can't do that.
You can't do that. I think that this kind of platform is the best platform because the conversation is never interrupted. You never stop for ads.
Yeah.
And no one can tell us when to
Except for
stop.
when I'm about to ask to go to the bathroom here in a few minutes.
You go ahead, man. It's all right. We could wrap this up soon. But I really wanted to get to, other than not having gun-free zones.
Yeah.
I mean, not having everyone armed to the teeth. And
well, no. Here's the thing. Here's the thing I was saying. If you're gonna have gun-free zones, make them real gun-free zones. Don't just put a sticker on the window and then say you can't bring your gun in here, and then not have physical measures in place to prevent it. Because otherwise,
how would you prevent it? If you have like a movie theater or something.
If you have a movie theater, if you're going to make it a gun-free zone, have a metal detector.
Yeah, but if somebody comes in and the metal detector goes off, there's still fucking guns in the room. And what are you going to do? You have armed guards to keep people from.
So then don't make it a gun-free zone.
Right. Okay, but even if you don't, say if you have a gun-free zone and you have a movie theater and you put the metal detectors on, the only way to enforce that is to have guns.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
so if you want to hire an armed guard to stand there, right, with the
Right.
metal detectors. Because, I mean, the metal detectors are only as good as the person being able to enforce it, right? So we need the executive, right?
Right.
So that would be an armed guard, right?
Right.
So think about it, though. We do it at the airport.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We do it at certain nightclubs. When I go, I'm not admitting to going to strip clubs, but I am. When I go to strip club, I get patted down. There's a
Right.
guard there. There's usually three guys there with guns.
Right.
I mean, and I don't. Besides the people they let in who shouldn't have them anyway, because there's always going to be cracks, right?
Right.
But at least, if you're going to make it a gun-free zone, put up the physical preventative measures to reinforce that. You can't just, a lot of people just throw a sticker on a window and say, this is a gun-free zone. The only people who are going to obey that are the people you're not even worried about anyway.
Well, the thing about movie theaters is movie theaters don't even say this is a gun-free zone.
They do.
When do they say it?
There's some, like, so for instance.
Some movie theaters? Is it in
there
places
are.
that are more crime?
It's state to state.
Right.
So for instance, like in Dallas, right, where
Right.
I live, there are some movie theaters where I can bring my gun in, no problem. There are other movie theaters that have these signs that say you're not allowed to carry a gun in here, right? And so it is state to state. Some states, they just require you to put up a sign.
Well, it sounds like it's business to business, too.
It is. It
Right.
absolutely is. So from that perspective, it's like even the courthouse, right? When I go to the courthouse is a gun-free zone, minus the fact if you're a cop. But
Right.
what do you have to do when you go to a courthouse? You go through metal detectors. There are cops
Right.
there, people there with guns. Right?
So what do you do about schools?
Same thing.
But like these guys that are showing up, they're not even students of that school, like
Well, see-
Parkland.
Yeah, but see,
Or
think
Sandy
about it.
Hook.
Think about it like this, though. This is where the argument gets really disingenuous, because it's like, oh, we want to save our kids' lives in schools,
Right.
right? So the inner cities have more violence than we can think of, right? There's tons of shootings that go on outside of the schools in inner cities.
Right.
When's the last time you heard a mass shooting in the inner city?
Very, very rarely.
Very rarely,
Yeah.
if not ever.
If not ever.
What's the one thing that they all have? Metal detectors.
Huh.
What's the one thing that Parkland didn't have? Metal detectors. What's the one thing that a lot of these suburban schools that get shot up don't have? Metal detectors.
Well, it's one of the things that they've found too is that it's a very strange sort of situation, but when you deal with places that have a lot of violence, when you deal with places that have gun violence and crime, what you don't have in those places is the random mass shootings. You have one-on-one crime, but the tangible reality of actual gun violence, for whatever reason, sort of eliminates these mass shootings. The mass shootings tend to occur in places where people think they're safe.
Yeah.
Right? Like schools, movie theaters.
I think there's just
Concerts.
there's a different dynamic involved. You know what I mean? It's it's going to become more of an anomaly, because if you compare the violence in the inner city to the violence in the suburbs, which present themselves in by way of mass shootings, if you compare the numbers as a whole, mass shootings account for a statistic for about 1% to 2% of all gun violence, right? And so, but there's an exceedingly higher percentage of gun violence in the inner cities, right? And it all really goes back down to what I said before. It's about the economics. So you have a situation in the suburban areas where, economically speaking, they're good. Right. So there's not really an incentive to just engage in random violence.
Right.
There isn't a narco economy there that feeds on itself, that requires you to engage in a certain level of violence in order to survive. Whereas on the other hand, in the inner cities, you do have that dynamic. So from that perspective, what ends up happening, though, even though there is money isn't everything, right? Money doesn't cure all. So you're still going to have instances of people who slip through the cracks because money doesn't cure everything. And so when it does happen, it manifests itself in these random acts of mass shootings, right? Whereas here, there isn't, if I know I'm going to school and I'm going to have to inevitably deal with the violence outside of school anyway, it almost makes it unnecessary to engage in random acts of mass shootings. It's almost kind of like this perverted distraction from wanting to mass shoot a place up when you have to deal with violence on an ongoing basis every single day of your life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think that's what their point was. Their point was that when violence is real and it's around you all the time, it doesn't become this attractive blow up the game option. Dude, why don't you go take a leak and then we'll wrap this up when you get back.
Cool.
Young Jamie's going to show me his collection of guns while you're gone. He carries one in his pants at all times, strapped right next to his dick. Do you think you'd ever carry a gun?
Oh.
Like, what if, like, What if someone came in here and got us a license for concealed carry and said, "Young Jamie, you need to be strapped. All you have to do is fill out this paperwork, and I'm going to make it happen."
Man, I just don't personally feel. I mean, I feel like it's also naivety or whatever that I don't feel the need to do it.
Well, most of the time you wouldn't have the need to do it, right?
Right.
The question is, if you were at a place like, fill in the blank, whenever one of these things has gone down, a nightclub. Let's say that gay nightclub in Orlando. Maybe you're curious. And you're walking
How about
around.
the movie theater? How about the movie theater? How about Batman, the night it came out?
Yeah, how about the Batman one? Or wasn't there one in an Amy Schumer movie? There was.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, there was a mass shooting.
Concert.
No, I think it was an Amy Schumer movie,
Okay, I think
one of
so,
her
yeah.
movies,
Yep.
because she became like this big anti-gun advocate afterwards. What do you think that you would ever find yourself in a situation where you'd want a gun?
I mean, after that happened, I've gone to movies and pictured it happening.
Right.
And I don't, you just think about what you would do. And I don't know that pulling out a gun and firing back is even in my conscious thoughts.
It's definitely in the cards. If the guy has a gun and he's in the room and you see one guy shooting people and you're there and he's not shot you yet, it's definitely in the options.
I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how long you're in there, too.
It's also whether or not you can keep your shit together while someone's shooting. You know, I mean, keeping your shit together while guns are going off, but that is not a normal thing for you. And the amount of adrenaline that would be pumping through your body. We're talking about if you were in a situation where a mass shooting was going down.
Yeah.
The people that think they could just pull out their gun and shoot that person, you might fucking hit random people. You might hit the wall. You might hit the ceiling. Like, here's the thing about, I'll tell you, I have a lot of experience in archery. And one of the things that happens with people when they're shooting a live animal is they panic. A big fucking moose walks in, and you might hit that moose in the dick. You might not even, the thing's as big as a building, and you might miss it totally. I mean, it happens all the time. 20 yards away, people miss the entire animal. They just, "Whoa!" And that's something that's not even going to fight back.
Yeah.
That's just a moose.
That's why the Vegas shooting thing, any witness reports or anything are so hard. I feel like anything, even video reports. It's such a chaotic situation.
Right.
Sunday night, everybody's wasted.
Yep.
So wasted.
Yep.
What are you going to do? You have no
Right.
idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's also one of those things, too, where there's a real problem with the conspiracy theories. Because one of the things that happened out of the Vegas situation was people would show up at all these different casinos and say, someone's shooting. So they would say, the security would go, there's an active shooter at Circus Circus. There's an active shooter. So all the conspiracy theories were like, look, there's shooters everywhere. There were shooters everywhere. No, there was people everywhere that were freaking out because this fucking guy was just gunning people down from a hotel room.
One thing I've learned about being a lawyer, eyewitness testimony is not reliable.
Eyewitness testimony is dog shit, man. I've had people tell me about situations where I was there. I'm like, dude, that is not what fucking happened. And then
Now-
you have to go over it with them, and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe you're right.
I will say this, though. People stopping mass shootings with firearms happens more than people realize.
It does happen. But
It's
to
just
deny
not-
it happens is it's very disingenuous. To deny it happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories out there where it's happened and people don't know about it because they're not going to push it.
So you think the elimination of gun-free zones would be the way to protect people?
I say, no, I'm going to clear it. I'm going to clean up a little bit. If you're going to have a gun-free zone, have physical preventative measures in order to enforce it. If you're not going to do that, eliminate them.
I think first and foremost, this would be the first thing that we should do. There should be some sort of a public hearing on the use of SSRIs, antidepressants, psych medications, and their corresponding instances, like the amount of instances where these shooters are on these things. Because I don't think people are aware.
I'll say this much to piggyback off what you're saying. If I was diagnosed with a mental disorder, first thing I would do is I would go to a bookstore or go online and figure out every possible way that I can self-help my way through it because I won't touch this stuff.
Well, one of the things that's just as effective, if not more effective, I think, Google this, cardio, I think exercise and running is more effective to treat depression than SSRIs. I am almost certain that's the case.
I don't doubt it at all, man.
I think,
Oh, you think so many people are addicted to marathons?
yeah. Oh, believe me,
They're
man.
going there to get high.
Yeah. There's something to it, man.
Yeah.
I get high when I run, for sure. Is there anything in there?
Every time I go to the official site, it says it's not real thing.
What
The
official site?
NCBI.gov.
What is the NCBI?
Where they did a study on it. Is exercise a viable treatment for depression?
Oh, they want to say no, get pilled up. But there are studies that have been done that show, because I know Rhonda Patrick was discussing it.
I have to be freaking. I hate taking medicine. Like I have to be on the floor before I'll
For
even take
depression,
Tylenol.
prescribing exercise before medication. Aerobic activity is shown to be effective treatment for many forms of depression. So why are so many people still on antidepressants? Well, here's one reason, and this is not to dismiss the people that are depressed, because I know people that are depressed, and it's a horrible thing, and I know people that have been helped by antidepressants. I know people that have, my good friend Ari, he was suicidal. He got on antidepressants. He's happy as fuck now. He's off of them. It helped him.
Yeah.
My friend Brian, it was the same thing. Not the Brian that we know, another Brian. He was a jiu-jitsu guy that I knew. He had a real fucking problem. Got on SSRIs, turned his life around, found a good woman, got in a great relationship, started his own business, weaned himself off of them. Now he's happy. There's sometimes people find ruts in their life. We had a podcast with a guy who wrote a book on it, a guy, Johan Hari, who wrote a book on depression. SSRIs for depression, heart failure patients, not so fast. The study should put to rest the practice of starting SSRIs in depressed patients with heart failure in an attempt to affect CVD outcomes. What is CVD?
Cardiovascular disease.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's with people with heart problems.
Specifically, but it's also depression.
Yeah. People with depression and heart failure. Yeah. Fucking exercise, I think, is it's a requirement of the human body.
Yeah,
I really do.
I agree with that.
Something.
Yeah, because
Something.
even my darkest times. So I'm never more at my best than actually when I'm down, when I'm going through things. Because my response to it is to tighten up. Right?
Forces you to focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of those things that I do is, like, I've been to the gym every day for the last 2 weeks, right? It forces me to, one of the things that happens is I start working out more.
Yeah.
Because of the clarity of mind I get after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the sense of accomplishment. And then it kind of starts me off in a way where it's like, okay, now what's next? It's like I'm chasing the next thing to conquer. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think focusing on focusing on means outside of just prescribing pills.
Yeah.
Right. I don't like taking pills. I don't like things that alter my mind. I don't like it. Maybe because I'm a control freak in that sense.
How weird. A guy with 100 guns is a control freak.
Might have something to say about that. I actually was just thinking about, I had a thought while I was using your super toilet.
Crazy toilet,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
You got to take a shit. It's the way to go.
I was like, man, yeah, I should get Joe Rogan one of my guns. And then I realized you can't even own it here.
I can't?
Nope.
What can I own? What do you have that I can't own?
Well, it's the first gun I've done. So this one just so happens to be one that you can't own.
So you have a company that makes them? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I have a. What I did was I came out with a signature series line of handguns. Well, this is the first one because it's not allowed in California.
What's wrong with it?
Y'all have a list of guns that you're allowed to own that it's not on. And then, like, you would have to, there's this micro stamping that's required for any gun that's not on the list. And it's so prohibitive. Yeah, it's weird.
So what is the different, what kind of guns are they? What is it?
As far as the prohibited?
The one that you have that I can't have.
Oh, I can have him pull it up on the side if you want.
Okay.
You mean that particular gun?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's about it? Like, what is the specs?
It just is. Like, it's just their list of guns. I don't really know exactly.
Is it the caliber?
No.
Is it the semi-automatic capabilities?
Nope, because there are semi-automatic guns on the list that you're allowed to own. There are other.
So it's just arbitrary?
That's what it seems like to me.
What kind of gun is it? Tell Jamie, he'll look it up.
If you want to pull it up, pull up Tiered of TYREDEFENSE, tiereddefense.com.
There we go. Dum 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 dum. Yeah, there's some weird shit. I mean, we got Jerry Brown as our fucking governor, that goofball. Is it right here?
Let's see.
Firearms transfers, work order form, gallery contact.
That's
Sorry, it's tier 1.
Yeah, that's not it.
Tier 1?
Yeah, it'd be TYRE.
TYRE. There we go. Bam.
No, not Tyreek.
Oh, God.
You're having a really
Yeah, I
hard
know you're
time.
struggling today,
What's
dude.
going on,
It's not
Jamie?
coming up. That's
People are paying
There it
attention to
goes.
him.
So usually it
That's what
comes
is.
up when I'm typing this stuff, so
Panic.
I don't have to type the
This
whole
is
thing.
That's
this
it
is
right
why
there.
people can't shoot
That
people
first-
when
that
there's
first
a
link is right
mass
one.
shooting going on. Pressure.
It's not.
Actually, no. You see one where it says The Advocate?
Yes.
That's it.
There we
So
go.
the name of the gun is The Advocate.
Someone might have beat now.
TYR,
That's why it's
service
not
unavailable. Oh, the hackers. They got to it already. It's the fucking Russians, bro.
Capacity problems.
Go back again.
Capacity problems.
I don't know if
you
everyone.
think we already
is
killed it?
Googling
We just
Yeah,
killed it?
Maybe can only take a couple hundred people at a
But
time.
by the time that it hits YouTube, though, isn't it a
Click.
minute or two later?
20 seconds.
20 seconds? Yeah.
Do
that's about it.
type in The Advocate and then Colion Noir and then see what that does. And then like erase tier defense though.
Here we go.
Let's see if that works.
boom. Click on the top.
Damn.
Damn, we killed that website.
Go to images.
Killed that website.
All right, there you
like,
go. That's,
like
I mean,
bullets.
that's the gun.
Okay, and why? That seems like a normal handgun.
It is.
So what the fuck is wrong with it? Why can't I have it?
I
Now I want
asked,
it.
asked the folks,
I need to
ask
make
your
some-
leaders in
make some
California.
calls. But what are they saying is wrong with it? Like specifically,
I don't know why they make the decisions they make in California. To be honest with you,
what is the specs of this gun? What
it is a 9mm handgun, semi-automatic.
Is it because it's semi-automatic or no?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No,
Just-
I don't think that's the basis. Like I don't know the complete basis and reasons for why certain guns are allowed handgun wise in California and others. I'm pretty sure there are going to be tons of people who tell me this because I have a huge audience in California. I think it's actually one of my biggest audience.
There's a lot of gun owners in California.
Yeah.
People aren't. The idea that guns in California are somehow or another rare.
You know, the funny thing is the birthplace of the AR-15 was in California.
Yeah. Well, that's a weird gun. It's a gun that people just have demonized. It's not the most powerful gun. It's not the scariest gun.
But
It just looks military, but they don't even use it in the military.
They don't use it in the military. But to be honest with you, if they did, I'd want that gun
Why?
because it's the most effective means to protect myself.
Right.
Like I don't understand this idea of neutering guns to the point where neutering guns to the point of irrelevance
Well,
or
it's-
ineffectiveness.
It's people that don't use guns that
Yeah.
have this idea, and this is where we're at now. I think one of the things that I'm getting out of this conversation with you is that there's not really a clean answer. There's not a clean answer, and if there was, people would have figured it out. It's almost like society has to continue to evolve, and one of the ways society evolves is having these conversations. You and I having this conversation where a few million people are going to listen to it, and then millions of people on
Having
their
that-
own
having
having
that
these conversations, and people looking at the reality. And that's in that way, I think what you're doing is important, and what a lot of people are doing is important, where they're talking about the actual numbers and the actual statistics, and
that's
letting
my-
us get a look at it.
And that's the one thing that I try to convey with my videos. I don't care where you stand on the issue. I just will have a shit ton of more respect for your position if it's from a position of education.
Right.
If you actually have some knowledge. I'm not saying you have to be a Jedi master of firearms. Just understand the very basics, the fundamentals. We have politicians pushing policy based on things that make no sense.
Right.
Like it actually exposes the fact that they don't know anything about firearms. And so it's like you're going to push policy on something that you don't know anything about.
Right.
And so it's disingenuous and inherently dishonest. So that's the biggest frustration I have. I look at it, look, I'm going to educate you and give you the information that you need so that you can make an informed opinion about it. If at the end of the day, I take you shooting, I tell you the stats, I tell you about how guns function and how they work, if you still are anti-gun, I can respect that. Now, that doesn't mean you get to then push your anti-gun agenda onto me and limit my rights because of it, but I can respect that. At least we can walk away and say, hey, look.
Well, I think we're
Look
also
at it from a different perspective.
I appreciate that, and I think we're also faced with the reality of the sheer number of guns that we have in this country. It's a staggering number, and
See,
you're not going to just take those away.
You're not.
Where are you going to put them?
And that's just now. There's some people who are like, well, we can devolve the number over time, right? We can just put these laws in,
possible.
and they can get bad for a little bit, but then over time,
I like how you're doing that weird voice when you say.
I always do that, right? That's
That's
my anti-gun voice. Because we do weird all the time. That's the anti-gun voice.
Would you be interested in sitting down, like maybe on this show, if I had an anti-gun advocate?
I beg for it.
Okay.
Not to say not. Here's
Someone
the thing.
reasonable.
Here's the thing. I'm not trying to get up here and crush this person and all that stuff. I've done that to death, right? But I do want to have the conversation.
Right.
You know, and I've done it on my show. The only problem is it's too easy to ignore it because of the platform that it's on.
Right.
You know?
Have you had someone on your show that made reasonable points? Like if somebody wanted to watch you with in some sort of a debate with an anti-gun person, is there a show that you could recommend that people could go watch right now?
That I was on?
Yes.
No.
On your show?
On my show?
Yeah.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. So one of the biggest flaws of the people that were on my show that I had that conversation with is you could instantly see it was more of an education process because you could tell they didn't know much. So what would happen is they make a point about why they believe this, then I would give them information, and then it would be like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do see what you're saying.
I
Well, I'm sure there's someone out there that is educated
I'm trying to
and
think of
is
who-
anti-gun. We'll have someone find them. I have a publicist. We'll have him. We'll have Matt Staggs on it.
Please let me know because I would be all for it.
Yeah.
I really would.
There's probably someone out there that's reasonable, that has good points, and has a well thought out, sound argument. It would be interesting to listen to you talk to that person.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the things we could take away from this is that it's a messy situation. It's not clean.
It's not.
It's not like, hey, we're putting poison in the water. Stop putting poison in the water. Clean up the water. It is not that simple.
No, it's not at all.
It's super complicated. It deals with mental health. It deals with freedom. And it deals with law-abiding people who aren't doing anything wrong, where people are trying to take away their rights. They're enthusiasts. They love guns. And I don't think there's any... Like, look, here's a perfect example. You're sitting here with a gun on your shirt. What kind of gun is that?
AR-15.
You have an AR-15.
Yeah. I actually sell these.
I have an archery shirt on. I could walk anywhere with this.
Yes.
No one would feel threatened.
No.
I'll kill the fuck out of you with this bow, right? But no one would feel threatened. But if you
Walk
walk
around
around with that, people will,
Yeah, they'll
be
feel
like,
some type of
oh,
way.
you
Yeah,
are,
one of those
what are you
guys.
doing?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
a gun guy.
Yeah.
Are you telling people you have that on you?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Are you warning people that you're a dangerous person? Oh, you're an archery enthusiast. Oh,
So
I did
awesome.
archery at camp. When I was in the Boy Scouts, we shot bows. We shot recurves.
I'm going to start opening girls at the bar with that.
Yeah.
I shoot archery.
It's not a bad move, man. It's not a bad move. So listen, I appreciate the conversation. I don't think we got anywhere, but I don't think you can. I think we talked about it.
Well,
though.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's a conversation that needs. So here's what happens: things happen in our reality that force a specific focus on the part of the conversation.
Right.
And so, of course, we weren't going to. I don't know how long we've been here. How long have we been here?
2 hours.
2 hours, right? We've been having this gun debate for how long now in this
Hundreds
country?
of years.
right?
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, especially the people who follow me, they wanted me to come on your show not because you and I were going to come to an answer, but to educate.
Right. Well, also to have what we have on the show, what I try to have on the show, just discussions, just talk about
exactly.
things. And let people talk, let people express themselves.
Yeah.
And I think you definitely did that today. You express yourself. You're a very reasonable guy. Anybody looks at you and says that you're a maniacal gun nut, you're pulling that out of your own head. But I would love to do that, and we'll try to find somebody. We'll try to find somebody if you're open to that.
Absolutely.
Trying to find somebody that could argue the point. But thank you, brother. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Man.
Thanks for having me,
Great
man.
talking
It's a
to you.
pleasure.
Man.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. We'll be back very shortly. We have a second round 2 today with Sam Harris and Majid Nawaz. See you soon. Bye. That was great.
That was fucking cool.